Wednesday night, Political Head Trauma. We're very, very excited. I'm Holly. This is Jared, and we are here to talk politics again for all of those tuning in. I know I've invited a few of you to tune in because some state delegates haven't had the opportunity, or county delegates, to meet with these candidates. And so we're pretty lucky that we have the last candidate that we are going to be interviewing for the state school board seat, District 10, and that is Matt Hymas. And so we'll have him on. And then after Matt, we're going to interview Tony Graff.
Yeah, Matt
running for County Council, District 1.
Yeah, Matt's he's the incumbent for District 10 here. And he's also like a school principal.
Yep.
At the it's Challenger, is that what it's called?
No, it's Excelsior
School. I knew it was a cool name like that. And yeah, we know Matt. We like Matt. We're gonna chat with him, give him a chance to give his spiel. That way, hopefully everyone has an idea on who they would like to vote for.
What
is it, Friday?
Friday is the county convention, and that's where our delegates from District 1, our county delegates, will be voting on that race. And we've invited our state delegates, our citizenry, so any of you that want to come out to our county convention at Twilla High School. It starts at 6 p.m. And we invited all the state candidates out. So if you want to get a chance to get in front of some that maybe you've missed, or you have questions for some, please come out to Twilla High School Auditorium at 6 p.m. And then we are preparing for the state race, which is on Saturday, and that's the 27th. So it's a week from the Saturday at the Salt Palace, and that's for state delegates, and that's where you're going to find out, who moves on to the primary and who the people's choice are, who the delegates' choice are. And we've had Monica on the show. We've had Camille on the show. And so, of course, we wanted to invite Matt Hymas, who is, like you said, he's the incumbent.
He'll round it out. And then we'll also extend the offer, of course, to they've got a Democrat challenger as well. But yeah, we'll shoot the offer out to everyone. Make sure that when it comes time to vote, everyone is educated on it.
Yeah, we're just waiting on Matt. But did you see the news that you posted? I guess you did. Adam posted it on our page about students at Mount Nebo Middle School in Payson walked out of school today in protest of furries being allowed in classes and attacking other kids.
Please tell me this isn't real.
Biting, scratching, and spraying chemicals like Febreze in their faces. A lot of people out there may not know what a furry is. Having teenager myself, I do know. It's kids who either think they're animals or they dress up as animals with the big, they look like, I would compare them to like a mascot. The costumes that they wear.
Tell me this isn't real.
Yeah, it's live in Utah this afternoon. Kids walked out of class and
how many furries are in there?
Probably, you know what? It's cultural think, right? It's social think. So it probably started with a couple, and then they all thought it'd be cool. And Adam Bartholomew was on the scene, and so he interviewed and talked to some of these kids and filmed it live, and it's on our page at Political Head Trauma on Facebook if you want to see that, because that's just my eyes can't roll enough.
Did Adam, I got to see a little bit of it, but I was setting up the stream, so I didn't dig into it. But how many, I would like a count of how many furries, how many, and is it just for clout, or do they believe they're like an animal?
The kids on this interview I saw said that now again, he asks them.
Is Carson sharing this?
Yes. He asks them if it's true, because they say that they've asked for litter boxes in the girls' restroom. And he asks them, is that true? Because I think that's just a rumor.
Hold on.
And these kids said, it's true. It's true.
Hold on.
Again, I don't know if there's photos of that.
And this is in an elementary school?
No, middle school in Payson.
So a junior high school. So you're 13, you're 12. You walk into the bathroom and there's a girl with.
No, I don't even want to visualize. Here's the thing.
I've got to do you because you're walking into the bathroom. Me, honestly, I think it would take the edge off of school. I would probably try to just enjoy it, but I'm a different sort. But
girls don't
walk
squat
in
over a kitty litter
and
box.
There's a girl who's ankle deep in dry sweep, just snapping off a heavy, just breaking a loaf, just laying a log.
This just wouldn't happen. They wouldn't happen. How are they going to take their whole costume off anyway?
Maybe they've got a flap like old cowboy underwear.
This is just crazy. I don't know how we can even pretend this is real, because it doesn't feel real to me. And I haven't seen anything like this in my own school. And I think I would lose my mind if I ever did. So,
well, speaking of, we got Matt in here now, so we'll bring him on, and maybe he could shed some light. What light would he be able to shed on this?
He'll roll his eyes as much as we do. I have no doubt. Hi, Matt.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you?
We were just discussing a story of one of our friends, Adam Bartholomew, shared today out of Mount Nebo Middle School. A number of children walked out in protest of furries being allowed to distract their classes, attacking kids with biting, scratching, and spraying of chemicals in their faces.
I heard about this actually quite sad and disappointing.
Right. How does this happen? Like, is this where teachers and administrators just decide, look, we don't want to get involved, and it just kind of grows through social acceptance?
No, you've got to ask, how does this happen? Did mom and dad check out in life and decide to allow their kids to, I don't know. Is it a mental thing? Like they think they're an animal, or is it just a new style trend?
Well, regardless of what it is, one thing that should be made clear is that in our public education, we educate children, kids, not animals. Right. So I don't accommodate, not in my school anyway, and nor should happen in any school. I don't accommodate animals in the school and in the classroom. So it's somebody asked me this question earlier today. They said, hey, where did we get? I mean, we are Utah. We have Utah values. How did we get here?
Yeah.
And I don't know where, it seems like it just happened so fast. And let's be honest, Utahns are kind people. We're just kind people. And so I see what happened is sometimes people have been able to just push and push. And the next thing you know, we're having this problem. And it's like, why did we let it get this far?
Yeah.
Now, you talk about, well, is this acceptable or is this where we are now? Well, it should never be acceptable that we could say, well, if you're a furry, if you fall inside this box, then you can spray chemicals on somebody. I don't even care if it's water. You don't get to do that. Right.
Yeah. That's assault.
It's assault because you don't know what it is.
So why are we saying, well, because they check this box, it's okay. It's not okay. And
what's that famous TV show Dog Trainer?
Dog Whisperer.
Yeah, it's Caesar something or another.
But listen,
see if he'll train
would like
some
to give
kids.
him a proper introduction. Yeah. So full disclosure, Matt, you are the principal of the school that my children have attended since kindergarten. And I have said this in every interview I've had with the school board members, is that I'm a very proud parent of my children. I chose the school on purpose for the values of the 7 habits of highly successful people. I think it teaches individuality, personal responsibility, and accountability. It teaches, you control your own destiny, it teaches manners. You talk about do unto others as you have done to yourself. And it's got a really important part, which I notice some other schools don't have, and it's history focused at even a very young age. My child learned about the Emancipation Proclamation in kindergarten. Both kids did. And I think that's phenomenal. And it was taught so well and classy, I should say. So this is the principal of Excelsior Academy and our incumbent. This is Mr. Matt Hymas, and you've been on the show before.
Yeah, and before you go there, I want to address what you just said here, because this is important. One of the things that has been happening since the early years of Excelsior Academy is the Veterans Day Assembly. Mm-hmm. Every year, we take a chunk of time out of the education schedule, of the learning schedule, and we invite veterans from all over the county and even beyond. We tell kids, invite your parents, grandparents, and then we send out invites, because we believe, one, in America, and we believe in those who have fought and signed up to fight and sometimes die for our country. And so every year we honor those veterans, and they come in, and we have a veteran speaker. And I don't know, Holly, if you've ever been able to attend one or not.
Every single one. In fact, my stepfather is a veteran. You have his picture on the wall, and my late father, is also a Vietnam veteran. And so we would go every year. In fact, I think this last year is the first year we missed it because my stepfather wasn't feeling good. But that is one of the greatest assemblies that I've ever been to, and it is. The kids love it. All the kids get engaged. And I think the veterans love it. I mean, Mr. Marston's father's a veteran. And he even spoke, who's the principal of the junior high.
Yeah, he spoke a couple
really
years
moving.
ago. Yeah, my father came and spoke. I invited him this last year, and he did a great job. A Marine Corps vet. And,
oh, wow.
And just a special moment. And just recognizing, and this goes along with my philosophy, and this is why I stop you here, is because we feel that it's important. We feel it's important for kids of all ages, whether they're in public education or not, kindergarten or younger, all the way up through 12th grade. And if we had a high school, we would do it in the high school as well. But it's important for them to see and visit with, and we ask our veterans to go visit classes. Talk to these kids. It's that important to take time to have that experience. So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's good. It's good you start them off young on a right foot.
Well, it teaches them pride in where they're from and what the possibilities are. And it teaches them love of their country and appreciation for the sacrifice. I mean, the assembly, if you haven't been to one, you're a veteran. And I think you would really enjoy it because it's so touching. And then the kids will take their grandparents to their classroom or their dad or mom. And then the classroom gets to ask questions. And I've heard the funniest questions as my kids have gotten older in their classes. And my stepfather enjoyed it tremendously.
Yeah. And Jared, you don't look like a crier, but I think we might be able to get a tear out of it.
Yeah.
It gets pretty emotional.
Good.
So
Good.
Matt, I'm excited for a few things. One is that, out of all the candidates in the races, you're actually, you're in a school, and your job and your success depends on the very standards that board brings down. And I think that's important. I think that's really important. And I want people to understand that, like, when you can say what you want to do and it's great, but now you've been there. Now you know how things work. It was your first term this last time, correct?
Yep. Yes.
So now you're there. You're at an elementary school that you put your own children in, and you've established standards. And this school already had great standards. I mean, I loved the school even before you got there. But then when you got there, it got even better. So I see that you implement these standards in your daily practice. And I know because it affects my children, it affects your own children. So I think that is something that people should really know about you is that you are living the practice. You're walking the walk, and you're not just a board member, you're a principal, administrator of a charter school. And I'm hoping that with someone like you, that with what you've done at Excelsior, I'm hoping that you could help improve other charters and make them up to that standard, because I think it's charters that are starting to really shine, right?
We've seen huge growth in charters, but not only are we trying to help other charters, and when I say we, I mean, I personally am trying to help other charters and say, hey, here's a way to do it that will educate children, right? And there's different methods, of course, we know that. But we found here at Excelsior with, again, with my philosophy, and I've tried to implement this at the state level as well, is that when we make parents partners, it has huge dividends, right? And the state level is a little bit different, right? I don't here I can call a student's parent or have a parent come in and work with us. At the state level, I get to visit with parents and gain perspective and understanding, and then take that back for votes or for even policy changes. But understanding that parents, that it's you and I and our neighbors and our friends who really know their kids best and want to help their kids, that's where we can really focus on educating students. I have never met a parent who is not interested in their child's education. And I heard when I first started teaching, it was like, these parents don't care. You're on your own. That's not true. And the heartbreaking thing is I see other schools, including district schools, that they're either not reaching out to parents or they're not demanding the support from parents. And I think when I got here, that was one of the things that we changed. Was we said, make sure that parents are involved in all aspects, right? We tried to give them more information quicker on their child when they could see a difference in their grade level. And Holly, you might get frustrated with the amount of things coming in. But
I know when my son has been tardy to his 5th period, right at the moment he's been marked tardy. I know when my son has an assignment missing before he's even home from school. So I have a conversation starter right there in the car.
Well, she's already taken away his iPad. So, yeah.
Well, we need to focus on things of that nature, right? These kids have to be prepared to run schools or organizations, to hold meetings like this. And putting a phone or a screen in front of them is not the answer, right? There's work to be done, and we need to do it.
Now, I was at a meeting with a candidate for this last night, and she mentioned that our districts are throwing screens in front of kids all day long, and they're teaching off of Chromebooks. I don't find that
they are. I can attest.
And so we've talked about this, and I also got this perspective from another lady that said, well, charters tend to be for parents who can actually drive their child, because most charters are commuter schools. So you're going to get a different type of child or a different class of family. And I can understand that. But at our school, I see all types of kids, and there's carpool groups and everything else. But I'm wondering why. Because I know they think that these kids are going to be on computers when they're adults, and that's their thought. But for one, I hate to be in charge of something like that where my child doesn't break it. And 2, I don't like my kids on endless screen time at home. Why would I want it at school? 3, how does that get changed? Because I think you said it, that being a local school board member has far greater effect on our local schools than, say, the state school board. Is that correct?
Let me ask this question. With this is it more cost effective for the schools to have a Chromebook versus buying textbooks?
Cost effective, that's a great question. I don't know. I know colleges have gone to ebooks. A lot of colleges have gone to ebooks, and back in my day, I was buying the paper book and buying and selling at college, growing up in high school, right? To me, there's something magical about holding a book, about turning its pages. about wondering what's coming next. Screens don't necessarily offer that. Even reading on a screen,
It's not the same.
I have a more difficult time reading off of a screen than I do from actual paper, an actual book. So, a couple of things here. Yeah, absolutely. Screens are important. Here we are having a very important conversation online, right? So there's no question that we want our kids to be familiar with it. What the problem that I'm seeing is we're asking kids to replace things with it, right? And we're seeing sometimes kids, their babysitters are phones, and this is their source of entertainment all the time. It's not to go outside and play like we did. It's just a little bit. It's different now. So anyway, yeah, there's dangers in screens. One of the things that we can do at the state level. Now, we've talked about local control. I've talked about local control. There's online schooling, which obviously you're going to have some sort of interaction similar to this. But when you talk about how can the state help mitigate some of this or minimize some of this, then we can write it into our standards. We can say, hey, we actually want you to write, not type. We want you to write. We want you to read classical literature. And I hope that classical literature is being read from an actual book. And so, yeah, to push more of this pencil to paper is a huge push for me. I would love to see that. Recognizing that there's a time and a place for screens, and it's not all the time, which some districts have adopted. And I think, if I'm honest with you, I think that I've seen some districts go back, say, hey, we were a little hasty on this, but not all of them have. And I hope that they get back to where they respect the pencil to paper process.
Matt, you've mentioned more than once in the meetings that I've attended, you are adamant about local control, which to me, it rings very true. And we talk about this all the time. How you vote locally will far more affect your life than how you're voting on the state and national level every day of the week. But, that word control, I feel like you could maybe describe exactly what your job is on the board, because because I didn't understand until I started going down this with these candidates. I didn't understand exactly what a school board member's powers are and their responsibilities are, because I just learned that you don't write legislation. Your job is to enforce it. But please explain what you on the school board with 15 people total, right?
Yeah.
What it is that board is for. What do you do?
So we will write, we will take legislation, we will take law, and some of those laws, especially educational laws or education bills, you'll see that it will say the state board shall, and it'll say like make a rule, or something along those lines. And so then what we have to do at the state level is we have to take that law and we have to make a rule that aligns with that law so that districts or charters have the ability to understand, or not have the ability, but can understand and follow that process.
You make it digestible for the districts.
Yes.
And you define things better, maybe, because laws can be.
Laws are oftentimes they're general.
Right.
So we'll put it into practice and say, here's what it will look like at the school level, right? And then even on top of that, like some of our rules will say a school needs to have a policy on fees, right? And there's not a whole lot of flexibility, but each school then has their own policy. So we don't write direct policies for schools on all subjects. But what we can do is we can say, this is the rule, and your policy has to align with that rule, and it cannot break it, and the rule can never go against law.
And this definitions that you provide, they then go to the local school boards, correct? To implement within the districts.
Yes.
Okay. So your power essentially is to get from the legislature what their bill says, then to add to it in a way that defines that bill so that's workable for schools and parents and teachers to understand. And then you implement it and then put it down to this local school boards who then put it into the district. See,
Yes.
a lot of people sometimes think that the school board's up there writing curriculum, writing bills at the Capitol. Now I know that a lot of you do spend time at the Capitol.
I thought you guys just did tweed try-ons and then went home, but
Well, you were close, Jared, but
I know. I see you're not wearing tweed and there's no
I know.
leather
Just
elbows
here,
in
right?
sight.
I
So-
gave you a heads up. It wasn't happening.
I've noticed that legislation in 2024, for example, can you give us an idea of legislation that you think is, because here's what everyone's upset about. They're upset about pornography in schools. That's the big topic. And I believe that it was covered or discussed during session. And I know so many minds and so many different people and chefs are in that kitchen to build that. But that was a big one. The next one is teachers, as the fine line between teacher and ally, LGBT versus gender, equality, the gender, what do they call it? When you identify as something, it's different than sexual, but it's
Gender identity.
So these things all got discussed, right? This year, is there legislation that's come out that you think is positive that we can look forward to as parents?
Absolutely. I've noticed that there's this narrative out there that the state board hasn't done anything and that they don't want to change these things. For me, that is not true. Absolutely, I am eager to get pornography out of our schools. Not only eager to get pornography out, but determined not to let it in. And I think that's a huge part of this, is that we don't want to continue this battle. This is not an ongoing battle. It never should have been a battle in the first place, right? And so thank you to Representative Ivory, who worked so hard in the legislature and worked with so many others to make sure that I believe it's by July 1st, it's before the school year will begin, that stuff should be removed from our libraries.
And is that on a level of, how are they deciding? Because, someone mentioned it at a meeting last night. Books should maybe be rated like a movie theater rates books. So if a book is over 13 years old, should read it, maybe they should be rated. Now, I don't necessarily want them in the library, but I'm the last person to say ban books, because some extraordinary books may have some mature content. But again, it's age appropriate. You get it in high school. You're not getting it in elementary school. And so I'm curious with his bill, did it give some definitions of what pornography looks like?
So we're looking at, and there was a special standards and assessment meeting a couple days ago. I think on the 16th is today. I'm losing track of days here.
Yeah,
That would have been yesterday.
It was
I get it.
probably yesterday. And they're talking about what this is going to look like and how this is going to come through. So you're gonna see that at the next May board meeting on specifics with that. But it is coming. You talk about like a rating system. Here's the thing. If there is a rating system, if it's in an elementary library, a junior high, or a high school, right? And then for me, I don't think it's appropriate. I think a school library should be for school subjects.
Right. That's public libraries are for that, maybe.
Yeah, you want to go to a public library, you want to search the internet, that's between you and your child, or your child, or that child and the parent, right? That's not for the school to get involved and say, oh, your parent won't let you read this. Well, let me show you. Here's a book that I think you can connect with. That's not our role.
No, in fact, that's considered grooming according to the law. If you're going to show a child pornography, be a teacher being an ally or just regular teacher. And that's so cringe. I can't even imagine.
It's an interesting thought. I think to the most popular children books of all time, the Harry Potter numbers, they would have every 4 books had to change their rating because they got the books aged with the kids who read them. They got more detailed and more, it starts out kind of plushy toy, scary nightmare, and then it
Right.
gets to, but what I would like to ask is, has there been a study into how these books got into school libraries?
I don't know if I have exact information for you, but from what I've heard, or from what I understand, and again, I could be wrong because I don't want to put anybody under a
Nobody really knows. It just,
but there's some organizations that kind of just sent material to schools. And
Kind
then
of came in a
put it
packet
in
then.
with good stuff, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, oh, here's a bundle of stuff.
So that could be just a publisher saying, I just want to get more of my books on the shelves, or that
Or
could have been insidious,
Parenthood, or-
it could have been anything. But yeah, that's a big question. I
Hey,
think
about these organizations. I know that the state school board works with a number of different organizations.
Yeah.
And have you, as a board, audited these organizations to maybe see what their intentions are? Maybe what their social justice stuff is. I mean, has anyone really gone into these organizations to see exactly who we are trusting with our kids as far as curriculum?
We have individuals from the state, from the staff, and take that for however you will, that have to vet these. And then we've also put processes in place that say any books or any material that comes into your library, schools, you have to look at. You can't just accept the Trojan horse, right? So that's where the state can come in and say, no, here's a process that says you have to look at what you're putting into your libraries. And if it goes against the law, then don't do it. Don't try to put it behind the counter and say it's for special occasions. Just don't do it.
so. Would that be something that you'd put a librarian in charge, or maybe the administration, or where would the control point for that be?
Well, of course, the administrator is responsible for anything that happens in his school or her school. However, yes, most likely they'd put a librarian in charge, maybe a couple of people to have some processes in place for security. But yeah, it would most likely be assigned.
So I have a comment offline that says Follett just sends books to school. And I'm not sure what Follett is. Is that an organization?
It could just be, I don't know if it's what organization it would be, or if it's a distributor or whatever. But these organizations, they're about making money.
Right.
So
Yeah, of course. If I was a publisher and I could add something into a pack, I would do that.
They just want to make money. So if they say, okay, I'm going to get a lot of money and I'm just going to push a bunch of materials to schools.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened. There was no process in place.
And
for librarians to check.
How many principals and librarians would be like, hey, look, they're offering me to get 20 books for the price of 15. And so maybe one of those books is one that is unacceptable,
that are pushing an agenda.
A principal would, accept that.
It says they're a leading campus retail partner that offers academic programs, merchandise, and services for over 1,000 campuses nationwide. Now, this came from a very reliable source. They're a book vendor, and they aren't reviewed. They send databases that aren't reviewed too. I'd like to get into that, but I'm hoping that this young lady will get into the chat, because I would love to have these questions asked directly to Matt, because he's going to understand what I don't. But so you really like Ivory's bill, and you see potential there to where we can, what are some of the things? I mean, aside from rating these books, how are they polling books right now when this bill kicks in?
So I had to, admittedly, I don't have the bill in front of me, and there were a lot of education bills that came through.
Right.
But I do know that this bill should it has the direction of saying we're not tolerating it, we're not putting it in our schools, and I don't even know. I mean, you talk about a rating here. I don't know what that means, because the filth that has been read to me, or that I have seen, it doesn't.
It would be an X rating.
Yeah, it's not for schools at all. I don't even know why it would be even considered, right?
Well, I figured if you can't read that book aloud in a public meeting, how is it sitting in a library for kids?
It's a pretty obvious removal process at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh,
To
yeah.
say, yeah, we're not. Why is this even debated?
Well, and so then you also have talked about Kira Birkeland. This is something that I really have noticed about you as a candidate, that you're not getting any limelight for yourself. Have you noticed this? You're obviously very humble, but you celebrate the legislators that are doing the work. You have mentioned in so many meetings that have been, sit down meetings with delegates, you're talking about the team, and you're talking about, I've seen you with parents. You're talking about we are a team as parents, as teachers and administration. So you talk about Kira Birkeland and her bill. So I would like to, we'll get to that comment next. I would like to know what you think about Kira Birkeland's bill, which was the bathrooms bill.
Okay. Yes. So I know I've said this before. I don't know why we would put the rights of others above somebody else's, right? So here I have. Oh my!
Is that your?
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't know if it was one of us, so it could be any of us.
You could try fighting to make your computer quiet, and that'll be a fight that'll take you 3 weeks. The show will be long over.
Hopefully I got it. And I'll be honest with you, somebody's wanting to play pickleball tomorrow night.
Oh my gosh.
So I might see,
wow.
there might be some more coming. Anyway, we're talking about rights here. So again, this goes back to, just because I check a box or I fit inside of a box, does that mean my rights are better than the rights of others? Sorry, that threw me off here.
What was that?
My rights,
that wasn't us.
Somebody else's rights? Absolutely not. So I 100% agree with Representative Birkeland that we need to protect the privacy of boys and girls in Utah's bathrooms and locker rooms. Sex designated privacy areas, right? While providing, and I have it right here, while providing flexibility for unique student situations without violating the privacy of others. That, again, I mentioned this, I can't remember when we were having a conversation. Oh, it was probably in a debate, that swimmer who has spoken out, right? Just
Riley Gaines.
horrifying. And I don't see why that would be appropriate to say, oh, you identify as a female, well, go ahead, violate the rights and privacy of the other, students who go in there. Absolutely not appropriate. And so very appreciative of what she's done on here. And you talk about, I don't like to use the word I a lot because I'm one person. Even, and I recognize that the legislature has a job to do, and I support them in that. And sometimes I don't always agree, but I support them in that. And I always support them in that. And then even referring to the board, there are 15 board members. Mm-hmm. And if I stand alone, I get nothing done. And, I that doesn't mean to say that I don't fight for specific rights and conservative ideas. That doesn't mean that at all. What it means is that I have to work with others, and I have to get to a point and convince, if you will, through discussion and sometimes even argument,
right,
that what needs to happen is best for kids. That these, in my opinion, conservative ideas is what's best for kids, and we need to push for that. And again, I'm glad it's not just me, and I will always say we, because obviously we have great legislatures and great people who are pushing our legislators to do the right thing for our families.
Salt Lake County had just decided that with if you identify, you can go into locker room in the, in the local city county,
But it's the county properties like the county rec
YMCA
centers and
type stuff.
such.
But here's what I tell parents all the time. I mean, you can love trans kids just as much as you love other kids. It doesn't matter, but they're in danger. Both the little girls that are in a room with a male, just as much as a trans boy in a room with a bunch of boys. You have to protect women. And we've lost sight of that. And I don't know what world we're going to get rid of all for one, when there's obviously ways to assist that child who is going through whatever, and they get to change in a bathroom or a separate area, whatever. But it's keeping children safe. That's your job as an administrator.
Yeah.
And I hope it's the thought of the state school board. So I know that you mentioned Kira Birkland and the locker rooms being the locker rooms being an
Let's just say
issue.
protected, right?
Yeah.
We need to
So
protect our locker rooms.
one of the comments, which I think you can see it, but I'll just read it. The state board will be revising the state math standards soon. I would like Matt to comment on his vision for the revision process and how he would like to improve the standards. Also, what are key things do our students need to know and do in mathematics that will help them be successful in their lives? I would also like to hear about the vision for improving reading and language arts for our kids.
Wonderful.
And that is a great question, Mary.
Wait, that's not a social subject. I mean, you'd think we were talking to an educator.
I'm sure we are talking to an educator, actually.
Well, I really do appreciate this question. I have been on the board for 4 years. We're wrapping up my 4th year here. I've been waiting for math standards. I started out as a math teacher, so
Right.
This is my passion.
And still no tweed.
Still no tweed. I'm sorry. I'll get one. We'll talk about that later.
No,
All
you
right.
won't. No, you won't.
I've
Not on
got to
my
work
watch.
this out.
You talk about my vision for the revision process and how I'd like to improve the standards. One, I would love to see our state come back and focus on arithmetic. I would love to get to a place where parents can actually help their children do math again. Do you remember those days? Because a lot of newer parents don't. Even my own child, I just told you, I taught math. I majored in math. I actually know a little bit about math, but I'm looking at my own children's book and I'm like, what are they wanting you to do? Right. And
Yeah,
so
you have to literally YouTube how to do this Common Core math to figure out how to help your 7-year-old.
Is this the Common Core thing? I've always heard about it, where they use different processes to get to the end, and it's thrown all the parents off.
Yes, and it's been kind of adopted. I think Common Core was brought up. It's been about 15 years. And I don't even know if it's been we've written it out of a lot of our standards. That's why again, I'm looking forward to this math standard. So if I address the last part of that, what do I want to see? I want to see foundational knowledge being taught to our K through 3 students. I'm tired of kids having to pull out a calculator in middle school for 3 divided by 3. And the answer is 1. Spoiler alert, it's 1. Anything divided by itself is 1, right? But kids are having to pull out a calculator for that. I'm going to share a
There's so
frustrating
many
story.
extra steps to come to an answer that you and I had to memorize in 3rd grade, our times tables. But
Right.
now you have to go by hundreds or tens, and then you go above, then you have to subtract, and there's so many extra steps.
Yeah.
And I thought this was by design to separate kids from parents, because my dad would get frustrated with me doing math. I mean, we'd get really frustrated. I don't get it. Well, why don't you understand? Parents already have enough homework ilks, but this, when I have to go Google to figure out how to help my child, because their answer matters and the answer was less important than the method. And I was like, don't you want them to have the right answer?
Right.
And memorization is how we did it.
It should be an instant recall. If I ask you what 7 times 6 is, it should be an instant 42. It should not be a plug it into my calculator. But we're not getting that. We're seeing kids draw a chart or a graph on the board of their paper to figure out double digit multiplication, where it's like, no, there's such a simpler way. And if you don't have your foundation, then you're going to struggle for the rest of your educational existence, right?
In
And those
any job you have that deals with money, you'll struggle giving
Right.
change back.
Well, and I would argue that if you don't have foundational knowledge in anything, you're going to struggle, right? Not
It's
just
true.
math, but so anyway, that's what I want to get to with math. Is I want to see in our early phases is I want to see more of a grammar stage, teach the kids what it means, and then we can break it apart, right? If I know that 2 + 3 is 5, and now I'm talking low level, if I know that it's 5, then I can say, I can look at it differently. But if I spend 20 minutes figuring out that 2 items here and 3 items here make 5, and then I saw a curriculum where they wanted you to discuss it with first graders or second graders for about 20 minutes, that's a waste of time. It's a huge waste of time, in my opinion.
I
So
agree.
we need to get back to this stuff where we're teaching kids, and part of teaching is sometimes we tell them and they regurgitate. And sometimes people have referred to it as drill and kill. Well, if you want them to make logical decisions, they have to have a strong foundation of grammar. And we're going to see the same thing in reading. Reading is key to everything. And that was another comment talking about the reading. What are we doing? We have at the state level, and we want to keep this going. I want to keep this going. Is we have pushed the science of reading so that all these teachers are trained in the science of reading. We have to understand that if you cannot read, it will dictate the rest of your life.
It's true.
And so this is crucial. And I would dare say, again, as a math major, I would dare say that reading is the top priority that education should focus on.
You know,
Oh yeah,
Matt,
communication.
Prager Institute put out a small video once that really, really resonated with me. And it was about young boys growing up in elementary to junior high to high school. And that young boys, they struggle. There's a lot that don't know how to read or read to their level. And I'm putting girls out just for a second, because girls too, but boys especially. And they get to grades where now they get to do creative writing. And a boy will write a paper about, well, a girl will write her paper about a story that has a beginning, and then there's a lot of mushy love and feels and all of that in the end. And a boy will write a paper and it'll include robots and explosions and invasions, and he'll get a lower grade. And yet he did the assignment, but teachers are looking for something more. And these boys, rather than, okay, I'll fix it if it's not what you're looking for, but I did the assignment, and a parent standing there going, what is the problem? This is what you asked for. Right. Boys tend to shut down, and yet their brains think differently. That's magic to them, the explosions and robots. And I feel like we're not teaching these kids and grading them based on, what they really know. How was your punctuation? Did you make complete sentences? Did you have a start, of middle, and an end? It's more about, well, it's not as good as hers. And then when boys fall behind, they're less likely to go to college or graduate, and that affects their whole life. And I think that we have to figure out a way to teach both boys and girls, but Absolutely. To also in our school, our kids every year they're in their grade, but my child had accelerated so much in spelling and vocabulary. He was going to the junior high when he was in 4th grade for those classes, because you were teaching at his level. And he passed his civics test this week or last couple of weeks ago. Now you won't have to take it in high school. Why are more schools not following the type of successes that you found personally in the school you're a principal of? Because I know not all charters do what you do.
Well, one of the things that we do at our school is there's a philosophy that I go by, And it's, if the kid doesn't know it, you haven't taught it. Or if the child doesn't do it, you haven't taught it well enough, right? And so we don't blame the child for not knowing. We don't just assume that because they're not doing it, that they're dumb or that they can't do it, or that they don't want to do it, right? We assume, we look inward. And I don't know if, I don't want to put other schools down, because I don't know what their capacity is and I don't know what they are doing. But it's my firm belief that if you want a child to do something, set an expectation, help them understand that they can reach that expectation, and then teach them how to do it. So you talk about these differences in boys and girls. Well, if you're getting papers like that as a teacher, for me, I'm looking inward and saying, okay, I wasn't clear on my expectation. I wasn't clear on what the assignment was about. And so I need to not punish the student, but reinforce, like, okay, make sure, whether it's in that moment or the next time, and a teacher just ages like good cheese, right? So you've got to make sure that you get better over time, is what I'm saying. I don't drink wine, or else I would have used that analogy. But anyway, I would hope that as an educator, that they would say, okay, how do I do this better? Because kids are kids. You talked about earlier, like what kind of kids are going into which kind of schools. I believe the input is pretty much the same everywhere. It's not exactly the same, but the input is pretty much the same. It's the output. Because of my ideals and my philosophies, it's the output that you're going to see kids rise and meet those expectations. It's because we've taught critical thinking skills. We haven't pushed an agenda. We don't want to push agendas. We want them to think for themselves. We want them to have self-governance. When a student does something inappropriate, I sat down with one today and I said, do you really think that was the appropriate response? And the answer was no. Now, that was my choice to have the conversation was more than that, but is it to have a conversation and teach the child, or just say, you know what, you are a problem, I am getting rid of you? What does that do for our kids? Nothing good anyway.
What you're
negative.
What you're actually doing, and I don't know if people realize it, but just my years at Franklin Quest in my old days, by setting a goal with a child, an expectation with a child, then teaching them, then celebrating when they meet that goal, that is how they get self-esteem. Yes. And that's what children are lacking. And you can't give self-esteem to a child, but you sure can give them ways to find it within themselves by accomplishing goals that they set for themselves.
Absolutely. The only thing that a student can do for themselves is effort, right? They could be smart or not as smart, let's say. But if they put in the effort, you're going to see rewards come through, right? And you talk about self-esteem. This, to me, is the greatest SEL program. We talk about SEL being a hot topic, and I don't mean to change the subject here.
What is SEL for everyone?
This is social emotional learning.
Okay.
And what has happened is this has become this thing where academics has been placed aside, and we're going to spend hours during the day talking about how it reminds me of that old SNL skit where I think it's Patrick looks in the mirror and says, "You're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you." Well,
is the SEL just to kind of socialize everyone first and then educate them second? Is that what it's about?
It's about a lot of these programs are about educating students to change their views in order to accept another's views.
Oh, so right. What would you call that?
I'd call that communist Russia.
Yeah, the Red Guard training camp.
The greatest thing that I can see for an individual is, if you want to talk about what actual social and emotional learning is, and social and emotional development, in my opinion, is finding success in academics. You want a student who is self-confident. You teach them how to read and do math.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, as a math teacher, everybody says, "Man, you must be smart." Well, no, I'm pretty good at math. That doesn't mean I'm smart. But that's the thing. If you can succeed in academics, not only are you going to feel confident, but people are going to be confident about you.
Mm.
It's
And
true.
so
And at the
yeah,
very
that's
youngest level, my child used to be, my son and daughter, totally different kids, totally. My son would do all of his assignments, never turn them in. My daughter would feel terrible if she missed one assignment on top of it, on top of it. Boys and girls are different. But it took, I think, a teacher at your school, and I'll call her out, Mrs. Larson, sat down with him and just explained to him, like, you're not getting credit. You're doing all this work for nothing. And
Yeah.
if you see it through to the end and you stay on the path, you're going to see that reflect. And it was like, I say that all day. He doesn't listen. She sits down at his level and explains it to him. And it was like, oh, okay. And then, holy cow, all the assignments are getting turned in. Now, we still have some, but I think that goes with your life. These are life skills you're teaching. If you see something to its end that you're committed to, you will find success in it. Another comment from Mary that she'd added is she would like you to remind listeners that there are not federal standards are developed by the board. I'm kind of confused there, Mary. There are not federal standards are developed by the board.
I
So
think she's
is she
trying to
saying
say
the board,
that
you
our
don't develop
standards-
the federal standards?
So the standards are developed by the board, by the state board, and that's what we're looking at. Like I said, when we talk about these math standards, they're not federal, but the state board gets together and says, okay, this is what we want our kids to learn. This is what we want them to know by the end of first grade. Now, we don't dictate how, again, with the curriculum, and I can't go into every teacher's classroom and say, no, this is how you're going to do it. But we can say they need to know how to do this. They need to know their multiplication up to a certain point by the time they leave this grade level. And hopefully we can put them in a way, and hopefully they can be put in a way where there's no time for this nonsense that we talked about earlier. There's no time for drawing a diagram out to find this. There's no time for discussions, because we're teaching kids how to do math, arithmetic specifically in those lower grades, and then again use that foundational knowledge to gain access to make logical connections.
When you're not talking about ideas and ideologies, you're talking about numbers. Nothing's more concrete than numbers.
I don't know. They're arguing that right now.
Aside from some are called racist. Just the social justice stuff is a nightmare.
I believe that we teach math as math, right? I don't need to get into some weird left field. We teach math as math. And
so you have a standard, and the different schools and districts, depending on their whether it's their economic makeup or demographics, can adjust inside of there as long as they meet the standard.
They have to hit every standard. So it's not like it's a standard as like you have to hit this bar, right? There's a list of standards that say, again, your students need to know how to, by the end of grade 1, know how to add double digits.
Okay.
Right?
So what if they don't meet that standard?
Then the students suffer. Now, I don't know if we'll see. So that's a good question. And I don't know if I'm trying to think of how the state board staff polices that, because that's not something that has been brought to us from my knowledge. But what we do see is we see schools fall behind, and then they get put in this status of like a turnaround school or something where where they'll need to get additional supports in order to meet the requirements.
I've got a question. Over the last uh, 20 years, male graduation has fallen and male attending college has plummeted. And at first they thought, 10 years ago, they thought, oh, we're just meeting equilibrium. But that has proven to been incorrect, where I think now it's what is it, 55-45, or even in a lot of cases 60-40 to females attending college to males. And it kind of concerns me that men are dropping out of society because I don't know if you guys know this, but when boys drop out of society, society gets real sketchy.
Thank you for that.
It does. It gets, that's when you see violence. That's when you see
Poverty.
rebellions and civil wars. And so
No.
I don't know, is there any momentum on that, or is that a concern that's on not just you guys, but is that a concern on the education system nationally? Because we're not hearing it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is it?
That's exactly what PragerU was putting their video out to kind of explain, that if we don't focus on boys learning these key fundamental subjects, that's one of the reasons is they're getting by through public school.
It seems
and
like
then
they
drop off because they don't know how to read.
It seems like they're moving away from it. They're eliminating recess in school, which burns energy off of boys when boys need to burn energy off. And so it seems like we're failing young men.
So I'm actually I'm glad you brought this up. It has been a concern of the board. And before I get into that, we saw this push, and we've seen it with multiple things as well. Not only gender, but we saw it with race and ethnicity, and with like you said, demographics. And there's this push to just get this one group. Like, oh, if we could just push this one group. Well, what happens when you just focus on one group? Exactly what we're seeing here. I don't have a problem. Of course, I'm ecstatic that more girls who have grown into womanhood, right, have taken on these additional opportunities. I love it. I'm all for it. But we can't neglect the other people in our society while doing it, right?
Yes.
And so at the state level, we as board members, actually in our audit committee, we talked about, or maybe it wasn't audit, it was in one of the meetings, we talked about having research done to find out what's happening to our young men, because there needs to be an even balance.
Yes.
And I agree that when we had X amount of males doing this and females down here, let's see what we can do to bring them up. But what happened is we ignore the males and then bring up the females, and now we're like this. It's the same thing, right? And so now we have to bring it back. So we're trying to find out, to your point, Jared, we're trying to find out what happened to our young men. Why have we not supported them the way that they needed support, along with our young women, so that we can have a good, balanced society? And I think we missed the mark on that as a society, as many organizations have started these different programs specifically for different organizations. We've left out the white male.
Well, right? White male's the bottom rung. I mean, they may as well be mascot poop under the totem pole.
I'm curious
though. This push that we were inherently racist, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I looked one time at a list of scholarships, and like literally thousands of scholarships, and I think like 4 of them could apply to white males.
But they also included all the others.
But they included all the others, but white males.
Tell me, Matt, because it seems like over the years we've gotten rid of shop and home ec or mechanics. I mean, I know a lot of boys in my high school were always out in the shop, out in the mechanic shop, and they loved it, and they actually grew a love of building things. And I feel like a lot of classes, are those classes just left public education?
No,
because
go ahead. Sorry.
I took home ec and I learned the basics of cooking and I had a great time, and I took sewing and then I took shop, and I have all my fingers. Hi, Mom. But what I'm wondering is, I know money was an issue and they were starting to get rid of those extracurriculars, they called them. But in the meantime, those were ways that really spoke to boys sometimes and girls, and enhanced their love of school, or maybe taught them a trade while they were still young. And maybe they went to trade school instead of college, but we're seeing that even trade schools could use more.
Yeah, I mean, so first off, I took home ec. I learned how to sew and cook it, and I remember sitting in an 8th grade class thinking this wasn't for me, but I did it, and I was very appreciative. It comes in handy later in life, right? Even in 8th
Yep.
grade. In high school, I
All the
took
girls are in that class with you, so you're no
Yes.
dummy.
In high school, I took some metal shop and some woodworking, and you know what I mean, auto mechanics. These are great programs, and they really do give students, males and females, the opportunity to see, hey, I like this or I don't like this. CTE, which is it has all these programs that we're talking about, career and technical education. The program has continued to grow, so they're still out there, but we would always like to see more. And we do see a lot of these males fall into these categories in the trades, and that's not a bad thing. And one of the things that I really appreciate about expanding these is it gives the student an opportunity to find out what they like, right? And you guys know this. It's like, well, we have more males in I don't know, construction than females, so we need to fix that. Really? Because I know more males who like construction more than females. So
Yeah.
that's natural, right?
You
So
want a mutiny, go kidnap women and make them go into construction in October, November,
Or work in sewers,
February.
or there's just ideals that women prefer different jobs than others. That's not all women, but I mean, that's common sense. You're going to find more women. I know we don't have a lot of time. Are you getting signatures, or are you going caucus convention?
I am all in the hands of the delegates. So
I love that.
they are going to decide in a week and a half. It's all in their hands. So
Excellent. Well, and
It's a week and a half, or is it this Friday?
no, he gets elected at state.
Oh yeah, you're a state.
yeah.
So state delegates, if you haven't had a chance to meet Matt, and you want to leave a comment for him, do it right now where he can answer it. Or Matt, how do people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you before convention? Are you going to be at our county convention Friday night?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd love to talk to as many people who are willing, and just let's get some conversation going. Let me answer some questions. I know, if I'm honest with you, there's been some false narrative out there, and I want to clear it up. So I've been reaching out to individuals, and you know, I want to make sure that you understand that I'm here for you. I'm here to do the work. I have conservative ideals, and we want to make sure that we keep Utah. So,
And what are you packing here? 5 kids?
I've got 5
Wow.
kids. Yes, sir.
I like it. A very handsome family, good-looking kids. I have one more question, kind of to follow up on this males getting left behind thing. Because, granted, I'm sure there's things that schools and the primary education can do to help this out, but colleges tend to also have a problem with this. Is the school board, do they have anything to do with the higher education at all, or is that something totally different?
So there is a higher board of education. So we don't get a mess with that. I'm sure there's committees and individuals who work with them and give them ideas, but we don't make policy for the higher ed or anything of that nature.
It would kind of be nice if you did. With this legislation that has just come out regarding HB 261, you mentioned that, and that is no longer going to be permitted in schools, which, for people that didn't that don't know, that's the policy programs on initiatives like anti-racism, bias, critical race theory, implicit bias, intersectionality, racial privilege. This is, I can't believe that we have to actually address this, but it definitely needs addressing because a lot of people are a lot worried about CRT in schools, and that's just come up over the last few years. Children are taught to hate themselves for the color of their skin, something they have no control over whatsoever. And when I ask, what are some of the, I think I asked you, what are the positive bills that have come out? I go to your flyer and you mentioned all of them.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed because, I appreciate who has time to babysit and know everything about the legislator aside from my friend Nicolene Peck, who is up there all the time for fun. She is just a wealth of knowledge. And one question I asked another candidate was, who on the board, and you don't have to give exact names, but who on the board do you see as people you can work with, that you've found you've been able to work with? I mean, you can give me numbers like
you know what? I have found that I can work with most of them. I'd say easy 10. Easy 10.
Excellent.
And there's a reason for that though. And the reason is as it was kind of maybe alluded to, that I work with people. I listen to people, right? I listen to my parents when they come in and say, I have a concern. That doesn't mean I change everything at the drop of a hat, but it gives me perspective. And it gives me an idea of where people are seeing things and how we can improve it. And that's what this is about. This is improving. And so when I have at least 10 other board members who are willing to not only listen, but share and work with and say, you know what, you're right. We can make this happen. Then that's huge. We can get a lot of work done when we work with each other. And again, that doesn't mean we have to compromise principles.
Right.
Sometimes we have to wordsmith things, right, and make it sound correct and make sure that everything's in there. And so we do that, and it takes time. And if I'm honest, again, you don't hear me a whole lot at the board meetings. I don't speak a whole lot. It's because I've done the work behind the scenes. By the time that gets to the table, discovery is gone. There's no time for that. You guys have seen these 15-hour board.
That is a great point. Please elaborate, because I think people see these school board meetings, they're exhausted by them. Some of us, I mean, I would like you to, if you are elected, I would like to make these school board meetings maybe more often and in the evening so parents can attend. But elaborate on that, because you see the fighting, and I don't know if it's fighting for the show, because the ones who aren't fighting are the ones, like you said, you've already done the discovery prior to even having the vote. So you don't need to discuss it. You've gone over it with your fellow board. So explain that a little.
Yeah. First off, if education is huge, this is not a game that we're playing with your kids. So if you're not prepared by the time board meeting gets there, you've missed the mark. Let's just say that, right?
That's fair.
Because these decisions are big enough where I'm not making a decision from even a 1 or 2 hour conversation. Now there's times where you have to look and say, okay, I've done the work. There's always changes. You guys have seen the board meetings. There's always changes coming through, and you have to analyze in the moment and say, okay, does this undo the main purpose of this rule, or does this add to a little bit? But if it completely changes it, then you might have to hesitate and say, I don't have enough information. This is too important for me to just pull the trigger right now. So yes, when I talk about doing the work behind the scenes, that means I'm talking to people in the field, constituents, families. That means I'm talking to other board members saying, what are you seeing in your area? Because I represent Tooele, parts of West Valley, parts of Utah County, right, or parts of Salt Lake County, which includes West Valley and Magna. Anyway, so I represent a lot of people, and I want to make sure, one, that we still practice local control. So that's what I look at when I look at these rules coming through is, do I really want to try to make Tooele County like Salt Lake County? Do I want to make Tooele School District like Salt Lake City School District? Absolutely not. So I've got to make sure that Tooele local control, which we talked about a little bit earlier, is always an option, so that I don't force a district to do what another district does just because. But I am willing, and I do work with others and make sure that when I get to that table at the board meeting, that I'm ready to go, and that we have good conservative rules and amendments to come out and take place.
That's
Everyone,
right to the point there.
yeah, his website is votehymas.com. That's VOTEHYMAS.com. Go there and check it out. It's a great conversation. I remember it was a great conversation when I talked to you 4 years ago too, though.
In fact, 4 years ago, I was blowing up the comments. I don't know if you remember, but it's one of the
Probably.
first times I had seen your show, and I was just blowing up the comments.
And I mean, you have her kids, and you also have a niece and nephew of mine. Although my niece might be in the elementary side.
I cover both schools.
Okay, so you have both of them. They're doing well there.
Do you see a difference in your teachers and your staff, according to like other schools? Because I mean, I can remember great teachers, and I can remember terrible teachers growing up, but the great teachers were the ones that really got to me and inspired me into debate, into political science. I mean, into communications, literature. Do you see that? I know you just did an award assembly for your teachers, for some of your teachers. How, and I'm sure you see, well, I don't know. Do you see a difference in your teachers? And if you do, what is it you do to really let the good teachers shine?
Well, we let them teach, right? Teachers are
That's brilliant.
passionate about what they do. And so we let them teach, and we give them the tools to do so. So we have a greater administrative support and a stronger discipline policy. That, again, I mentioned at the very beginning how we recognize that parents are a part of this education. So if a student is struggling, that's not a school problem. That's a family problem. And how can we support you, right? And that takes a lot of pressure off the teacher, not to say, well, now I don't have to do it, because that's not it at all, but to have that additional support. So when we say we want students to read 20 minutes a night, that doesn't mean I want them to text 20 minutes a night, right? And read that. I want them to open a book for 20 minutes a night. Imagine the relief for teachers when a student can actually read because parents have been making and having their kids read for 20 minutes. When a teacher feels not only empowered in their own classroom, and I tell them, if a student is taking away from the other 27 or 28 students, then let administration step in and help, right? So when a teacher has that autonomy to say, you know what, I can't focus on this student for 10 minutes while everybody else runs free. I need to disengage and get the help. That helps teachers. And then we at our school, we try to make sure that education is uniform, meaning you're going to be taught the same thing in every teacher's class if you're in that grade, unless you're in, we talked about leveled learning, your son being great at math. And so we put him in a math class that's challenging for him based on his ability, not based on his grade level, right? Mm-hmm. So all of these things are helpful to teachers, where they're not trying to, at the local junior high, I get all 7th graders in Math 7. So I have people who are up here and people who are down here. And that is so stressful for a teacher. Yeah. And so we try to alleviate those things. We try to give extra help. And I'd love to see this throughout the state, by the way. I don't change philosophies from what I do in my career to what I do on the state. but really empowering our teachers to stay happy and stay passionate about what they teach, and your kids benefit from that. And
It's
like you said, we
so
had an
true.
assembly the other day where we recognized some of our teachers who had been here for a long time, and it was just a great assembly.
I like that as a state school board, you allow the districts to kind of design their curriculum, and you just give them standards, because that way you have that petri dishes of ideas, and you get to find excellent, and other schools can copy or negate what they witness. I like
But
that.
that's something that I wish more schools would. I mean, when you see these different districts, some are doing great things and some aren't. And I mean, of course, I already said I would love to have people out there championing for charters, because I don't know, it's a different feel. I want every kid to be able to go there to a charter school if that's what they want. But I realize that the districts are all people have sometimes is public school. And I went to public school and I turned out okay. But I think that stop laughing. Why are you laughing? I think that once we've learned what's working and working well in a school, what's bothering me is the molasses style of, well, why don't we do that? Instead, we're just letting some districts burn and just, I wish that there was a way to get the greatest of, from all the schools, put it together, and the whole state and legislator says, this works, let's do it this way. And, let's get some of these organizations out that are questionable, that are providing curriculum, or Planned Parenthood was part of sex ed in our state for a long time. And, and parents are too busy to get into it and know it. I think going to a charter does require a parent actually being engaged. I mean, if it's not volunteers or donations, it is 20 minutes a night with your kid reading out loud, and you're timing them, and then you're asking them questions to make sure they understood what they read. But my kids were speed readers. They were speed readers by first grade. And Miss Green, big thank you to her, because she taught my son a love of learning that I tried, but it was Miss Green. And this is where I'm getting, if we know what works, we need legislators to start implementing it statewide. If that's who's supposed to do it, who's supposed to do that?
Like I said, we write standards. We can't dictate what they teach, and local control. But to your point, this is common sense. Why wouldn't every teacher demand that their students are reading 20 minutes a night? I hope that they are, right? Why wouldn't you? That's just best practices. And so I would hope that there are those schools out there who are saying, you know what, we're failing our kids and we're failing our families. We need to demand more, because kids can do it, and the kids will do it. And like you said, I mean, you gave credit to Mrs. Green. Wonderful. But imagine what would happen if you weren't supportive, if you didn't say, don't worry about that.
Oh,
right?
Who knows what?
So it takes effort on parents, and sometimes I've been on top of my game, and sometimes things in life happen that I've been on the bottom of my game, right? But it really does take all of us. And that's what I'm saying. When we get parents involved, whether at the school level or at the state level, amazing things happen.
Well, and I hope you'd push that, because, well, I know you push that. You're highly engaged, and the parents tend to be in the school that I'm familiar with. But I know so many parents out there that are probably listening that feel powerless and hopeless right now, because they've gone to homeschooling, and they're probably doing great with homeschooling. I know you support homeschooling as well.
I do.
But I feel like we have a gun to our head. Our children have to go to public school unless we find alternatives. And I think a lot of parents are just exhausted because they don't know what's going on, what's happening right now with these furries, and what's happening in their girls' sports. I mean, all of this just feels insane, and we feel helpless. And that's why you see so many parents turn up to school board meetings, losing their minds. And
I would like to just talk about furries for an hour. I don't. It's kind of a super novelty. Like, is it a cultural thing? Is it just
Feels like
to
it's
fit in? Like when I was in school, people listened to the early stages of goth started showing up. You know, it was before black fingernails, but they wore all black. And
They were called mods in my school.
yeah, whatever. You know, is it just that situation, or is there a kind of a cultural mental disorder appearing in front of us?
You're seeing it in media. You're seeing it on Netflix, on Disney
I don't know.
shows. You're watching it. Cultural shift
I don't
by
watch
design.
a lot of TV, but I
Kids
just
do.
I want to close out with one last question.
There's still one more thing we need to get
Okay.
into really fast.
But are you guys? Does the school board look around at other states and meet with other states and kind of see what's going on in other states and get a feel for, are they doing some severe successes that we can adopt here? Is that something that happens as well, and swap stories?
It is. Actually, I serve, part of my responsibilities on the board is to be part of the governing affairs committee of the National Association for State Boards of Education.
That
Wow.
you dug deep into.
Are you appointed for that or
into
elected
the
by your peers? How do you get
bag
that?
of
So
bureaucracy there. That's at the bottom of the bag.
No, that's a great.
Oh no, it
honor
is. It
because
is.
he
It
gets
is.
to-
But it's at the bottom of
How
the
do
bag.
you get that?
So I was first off, there's a list of things that say, hey, what are you interested in? And then you're appointed according to that list. And I thought, governing affairs committee, I would love to be a part of that, to hear what, just like you said, what are other states doing? Are we on point? Are we better, or are we struggling? And in fact, in July, I've been invited to go speak on some things that Utah is doing in regards to math. And so I'm going to go to DC in July. So yeah, I've been a part of that. We discuss with states like Hawaii, Indiana, even we hear about what New York is doing, and I think, man, I'm glad we're not New York. California, it's just there's some scary stuff out there.
A whole different set of pressures in those two states.
Nicolene Peck brought something up regarding data.
I think she's talking about
and that's something that's happening
the difference
within
in
our schools.
graduations.
Within our schools, when teachers will send home, or they won't send it home. We've heard about this, where the teachers have given, questionnaires to kids, or the kids' data is getting shared at a very young age and compiled. And I want to know, sometimes the data is skewed on this, so we have to be careful not to jump to conclusions. And I think she's talking about male, female, but a child's identity and data. What is the school district doing to protect that? And before they're of age, when some of the curriculum that I heard about with Bill Gates and stuff they were trying to design with Common Core to try to steer kids in certain directions of fields and career paths. And a lot of data gets brought home. I'm wondering, is our state doing anything to protect our kids' information, their data, where it stays in school, or does it go statewide? Does it go nationwide?
So you're exactly right. There is data everywhere. And
it's the hottest commodity right now.
Right. And so I'm gonna start let's start on the district level. So for my district, and I can't speak to others, but for my district where I am, is we don't share that with anybody. And we just don't. But we're not a large district. Now, if let's say that Tooele County School District, let's say that they had data and they had a third party come in, then they have to contract and say, okay, this is what this agreement looks like. And then they have to make that decision. But there's always something, this comes from the state, there's always something that says for a parent to say, do not share my data, right? And that should be honored. There's always something in there. And sometimes, hopefully it's never hidden. Hopefully it's as exposed as it can be. because if a parent doesn't want their data shared, then a parent shouldn't have their data shared. And when I say their, I mean their student and
Right.
theirs, right? Their entire family.
Well, yeah, the parent is still financially liable for the student. So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and a
technically
child's
it's
whole
theirs.
career or their whole future could be ruined
Yeah.
by data being shared. I mean, you look what happened to Kavanaugh and an accusation made against him when he was 18 years old. And here he is 60 years old and there's no proof of anything, but he gets wrung through the mud for a month and his whole reputation obliterated because we live in a cancel culture.
Right.
And if your kid has a fight in 6th grade or, just information about them that goes out there on the web, very sensitive information. I just hope that our schools are being a front line to protect us because it's hard enough with digital everything, right?
Agreed. And let me just because I serve as chair of the Law and Licensing Committee. And, 2 years ago, I took this over from Carol Lear. And we have seen some great things happen since then. We've seen some really, I would say, really conservative rules that have come through law and licensing that have been protections for the students. But I want to bring up, because you brought up data. Whenever something comes in through law and licensing, regarding data and data privacy, I always get emails saying, do not share any data. And I agree with this. I also agree that it is the parents' data. And so if they choose to share, that's their prerogative. So this goes to one of those things where we all, the old saying, we all like local control until we don't, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to make the decision for you, or do you want to make the decision for you? And for me, it's you want to make the decision for you. So I'll usually say, I'll look through the contract. I'll say, where is it that the parent gets to dictate whether or not they want to share it? And if it's in there, then I'll say, okay, I support you. But if it's not, if it's hidden, then we don't do it.
Matt, again, you could have led with the fact that you're on that committee too. I mean, these are really important. See what I mean? He doesn't talk about himself.
Busy guy. Nicolene
I love
says,
to work. I love to work. Anyway.
yeah, we can tell. Nicolene says multiple bills have been passed to help protect data, but we keep working on the problem. I so wish that we could get the Department of Justice out of Davis school districts. They store data forever.
Frightening.
Hasn't that gone on forever? I feel like that has just been going on for
what was it? Was it a bullying situation that brought him in? I'm digging into my memory hole here.
Yeah.
And so they came in because they felt that the school district wasn't managing bullying well. So the DOJ came in to run it.
And
let me just ask you this, because we got Tony on and we got to cut you loose. Well, let me just ask you this. How has the Department of Justice done on educating? They've
not done anything.
Well, I'm just wondering, are the schools there in the Davis school district, are they performing to standard?
They are performing to standard as far as I know. I'd have to look more at the details, but I haven't seen any concerns come through the state that says, hey, Davis is struggling with standards.
Okay.
Obviously it was on this incident with bullying, targeted around racism. And so that's where the DOJ got involved. I don't know how long an investigation like this takes, right?
The kids are well past graduated by now.
You think? I thought this happened just a few years ago.
Hasn't it been like 3 years now?
I don't know if it's been that long, but it's been a while.
So Nicolene says that someone committed suicide and the mother sued the school and the DOJ was part of the suit. I hope a couple things before we go. I know you've already committed to doing town halls and after you're elected. I know that was a question with many delegates, is how approachable you will be. And I can say that you've always been approachable to parents.
Well, he has the thing at his school that we went to a couple months back where The other guy wore tweed. I just throwing that out there.
Well, there are
You
some
gotta get
nerds
off
that are
that
still
tweed, man.
show it.
Dude, you're a math
But you're
teacher.
committed
Hey,
to
don't they issue that? Doesn't it? They hand it with the diploma.
that's
They're
in
like,
like higher ed. I
It's
think
like
they
the green
require.
jacket in golf. They help you put it on. Yeah.
there it is.
You've committed to meeting with people with people in the district as often as maybe you'd like or they'd like, which is amazing. And I know that you have committed to working with legislators and to getting good policy and also working with the other board members. And you've said that you've committed to making sure that that we are up to standard and that we are not lowering standards in order to get kids past. We want to give them that goal and watch them achieve it and give those teachers more freedom to teach and to teach their way, but also getting rid of all the DEI stuff and all of that coming down from the legislature. So I know that you've also agreed to, what you're already doing, which is basically getting stuff done. And is there anything that you want to, and you've committed to, well, you are a conservative in your own life and you live by that, but you also commit to preserving parents' rights and maintaining parent control. And you believe in local government as local as possible.
And you've also given our community 5 children to raise up and lead us in the future. That is you're
helping
that is
with
a
the
good
birth
thing.
rate struggle. So good for you.
I think
on
making
that.
children is a good thing. It's a positive.
All this stuff is such good information, and I'm sorry we're having to cut you loose, but is there anything you'd like to leave us with? And people, he's not getting signatures. So if you're a state delegate and you really like him, call Matt. We've shared the website here in the show notes, and get in touch with him. Reach out to him if you have questions. We highly encourage you to donate or, volunteer. He will be at state convention next Saturday, and he will be at our convention. Get with me, Matt, about reserving your booth space, because I don't think we've actually talked about that yet.
Okay.
But we've invited all the state delegates to come to Friday night's convention so they can get in front of you if they haven't yet, and all of the candidates that are running in the state race. Anything you'd like to leave us with?
You left me with a great thank you for sharing those things that not only I've committed to do, but that I've been doing as well. This is a large effort here. It's a heavy lift, and it takes all of us to do it. And I just appreciate you, Holly, and you, Jared, for taking the time to have me on here. This is not only my career, education, and so I want to see it done right. But also my kids have to go through this. My soon to be grandkids are going to have to go through this, right? This is part of my community. So we want to make sure this is done right. And so this is why I want to be a part of this, to make sure not only do we uphold Utah values, but conservative values as well, and make sure that our kids have a bright future. Frankly, so they can take care of me when I'm at retirement age, right? I mean,
Well said.
If we do our jobs right.
Well said. Everyone, that's www.votehymas.com. That's HYMAS.com. Everyone check him out. Thank you again, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
And hold on just a second. Tony's coming right up, and we'll bring him on. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Have a good night.
Yep.
All right, Tony, thanks for waiting for us. I've got to step out real quick. So
you want to just take a break for 1 second?
We'll take a break for 1 second.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
All right.
And we're going to change kind of our paperwork around. So audience, stay with us. We're not going to be longer than 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you. Okay.
All right.
Welcome back.
Hey, so we've got Tony
Hey
Graff.
guys, how are you?
Tony,
Good.
how are you?
You guys, welcome Tony Graff, who is a candidate for District 1. So those of you
Tooele County Council, District 1.
those of you county delegates will be in that race for District 1 on Friday. So get there at 6 p.m. so you can get in front of him and get to know more about him. I always ask this. Did you gather signatures? Or are you conventionally?
I am a convention purist. I think that is the best way, and that's the way I've chosen. Not to dismiss others who've taken the other route, but that wasn't the route for me.
Well, that's music to my ears. That's awesome. So, Tony, you have experience in being on a council. So please, will you give us a little bit of your history? And we can get into a lot of what you did on the council for Tooele City, but we'd like to know about you. What do you do? And why do you choose to go into politics? That's just, you're asking for trouble.
So as you alluded to, my service to Tooele began with the Tooele City Planning Commission. So I did that for 2 years, and I was the chair on my second year. And after that, I decided to pursue Tooele City Council. And so I joined Tooele City Council in 2020, and it was very unique, right? A lot of things happened between 2020 and 2023. And,
you could have picked a harder year, right?
Right.
A lot of things happened.
Well, I mean, you have to throw in an earthquake, COVID, general craziness, and it was really a good experience to learn not only about municipal government, but really how to serve in situations that are unique and stressful. And so I was grateful to serve on Tooele City Council for the 4 years I was on, and had great experience working with the community. I give a shout out to my fellow former council members. They were incredible to work with, and I appreciated what they brought to the table. And one of the things I'm most proud of is how well we worked as a council. We didn't always agree, but we agreed to get along. And I was very grateful that I had that great group of council members to work with. So it made my life a little bit easier. And all the horror stories that I heard about infighting with councils, that wasn't my experience. And again, I credit my fellow former council members for being willing to listen, and we all respected each other, and it was a really unique and great experience. So
okay,
good to hear. Now I want to take a minute and talk about your past, because you were I'm trying to remember, I'm digging back. You were a prosecuting attorney in one of the Polynesian islands, correct?
Yes. So out of law school, I went to the University of Utah for my undergrad in law degree. And,
go Utes.
Right. And I, still paying, but that's okay. I can't reach anyone else because
Biden didn't pay off your loans?
No.
Weird.
No. And that's okay. They're my loans, and I get to pay for them. But that's how it should be.
Oh, wait a second. Now that sounds like blaspheme to young ears right now. Anyway, so where was you? Tell us about your time there.
Yeah. So right out of law school, I graduated during the Great Recession. And so my first job was as a special assistant United States attorney in Washington, D.C., prosecuting inner-city domestic violence. And that was fascinating. And so it was.
Sounds awful. It sounds like a nightmare every day.
You know what? It's as a prosecutor, I've always wanted to live where there was interesting crime, right? I know that's kind of twisted, but I want good crime, because that makes it more challenging, and there's a need, right? If there's crime, unfortunately, that means there's victims.
Yes. And it's good. The prosecutor is the voice of the victim.
And so it was a great opportunity to really cut my teeth on unique situations, very diverse groups of people, and lifestyles that I hadn't encountered before in inner city DC. It was eye-opening. I learned a lot. And so that was actually a fellowship out of law school, which was unpaid. And so I did that. I worked for free, Sometimes I would work 6 days a week because they would have us work. And I was grateful, right? I was working with some of the best and brightest attorneys in the nation, and I just wasn't getting paid, and they were, and that was okay. And looking back, I don't regret it. That was probably the best way to start my career. And so after I finished my fellowship, decided to see what was out there, and the next stop went all the way across the country again, and ended up in rural Nevada, Pioche, Nevada, population about 475. The county is similar to Tooele. Lincoln County was 10,000 square miles, and it had about just under 5,000 people. So I learned how to go from a very large city and metropolitan area to a very small rural community. And I love that. I worked closely with law enforcement. It didn't take too long to get to know them all, and really everyone, right? Because when you're in a county of less than 5,000 people, you know everyone and everybody knows you. And that really taught me how to communicate better and listen better. And so I was able to marry DC with rural living. And then after about a year and a half, an opportunity arose, and thought, well, why not? Let's mix it up a little bit. And so that's what took me to the great territory of American Samoa, where I was a territorial prosecutor. And that was an incredible experience living in American Samoa. And the thing I always love to tell people was I thought the American Samoa was in the Caribbean. And so I'm like, this is going to be great. I can go to the islands, I can go to Haiti, I can all these cool places. And it was literally on the other side of the earth. It's by New Zealand. So
the closest place is New Zealand and the Philippines.
Yeah, but you still had palm trees, right? And a beach.
Palm trees, beach, coral reefs.
That sounds horrible. Not really. That sounds amazing. So you've basically been when I think of prosecutors, you spend just as much as criminal defense attorneys to get your education, and yet you go into a life of, it's not profitable. It's not something that you can make tons of money doing, but you do it on behalf of representing the state and the victims. So, it's pretty incredible. Have you ever thought about changing course and going into the other side, or do you feel content as a prosecutor?
I am so grateful for what I do. My specialty, and the area that I find that I just find the most fulfillment is special victims prosecution. So 95% is sex crimes prosecution for children and adults. And so I am very grateful that I get to work with that segment and work with these victims who are incredible. And they are some of the most challenging cases, difficult, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But it is where the most work is needed. And I'm grateful to work in that, and I work in it now, and I will work in that area until I no longer can. And
you work in Salt Lake, or?
So I did. So when I came back from Samoa, I started at Salt Lake County, was there for 7.5 years. And then I needed a change. And then I worked as the section chief of SVU in Utah County. And then Davis County said, hey, we have a spot for you. Come on up. And so I am doing special victims in Davis County, and I love it.
My stepmother was in law enforcement, and she went into investigations of crime against children, special victims. And that takes a really different type of person, because most law enforcement officers can only be in sex crimes for a couple years before it just gets to be too much. And I think when you can actually, you feel like you're helping. A lot of people that are in that, they feel like you're not getting the guy, and it's not happening. You're not seeing it fast enough, because those cases take a lot of time, and they're highly emotional, highly volatile, and getting those victims to get on trial is really, really hard. So
Right.
That's no easy feat.
And it's, I'm in trial this week, and I'm doing a case that I tried back in February of last year, and that resulted in a hung jury. That means the jury couldn't come to a decision. And so we're retrying it again. And so this is going on 3 years for one
Wow.
case. And it is, but you know what? There is nothing better than being in a job that you love and you find fulfilling. And so you're right. I'm never going to make the big bucks of a private attorney, but I am. Oh, yes, you can. Okay, thanks, buddy. And the other one. How about the other one? Okay. So guess the parents.
And he is also another person who is making babies to take care of us in our twilight years. So thank you.
Right. So I have 3, and they're all at North Lake Elementary, and it's great. I love it. So
That's good.
and it's great because my kids are help bring me back to center. Right. There's days I come back and I'm like, this world is twisted, everything's crazy, and I come back and I realize, you know what? That's not true. There are plenty of healthy, normal people in this world, and so it reminds me that what I see is a small segment of society, and so that's
They
always,
are your why. Like your little faces are your why. And I think that's amazing. So why don't you tell us what are some things that you're proud of when you were serving on the Twila City Council? Like, I mean, that's a really crazy time to be on any council. Our county council was going through a huge change during that time. COVID, the potential mandates, the state involvement, and that's on the grand scale. At a city, I mean, you guys had to do a lot. What do you think were some of your biggest accomplishments?
Well, and I'll start by saying this. My biggest accomplishments were group accomplishments. I never did anything by myself. It was because of the council. And so I will always give a shout out to them because it was because we agreed that we accomplished the great things we did. And one of the things I'm most proud of was about 2.5 years ago. And you guys may be aware of this in law enforcement, there was pay discrepancies. And for Twila City, an officer could make $10 more by just making the drive to the other county.
Yeah.
And once we found out, we knew that there was officers literally with applications out, and the cost to hire a new officer, get them trained, have them go out on,
With an FTO. Yeah.
FTO, you're not going to get any bang for your dollar for 3 to 6 months, but you're still paying the same rate. And so it made sense to us to get the data, and I will credit the HR director at Twila City was amazing. She literally called so many different agencies to give us a good statistical study of what the pay rate was. And we had to turn around in 2 weeks, and we were able to act quickly because we knew if we didn't, we'd be losing officers in a week. And so I'm very proud that the council was able to, we were able to get the information, understand what kind of raise increase we needed to do to keep our officers and actually implement it. And I'm very proud of that because that was a group effort, and we retained some incredible officers who were of value to our community. So very proud of that.
That's a common thing I'm noticing. It was the county faced kind of the same problem. Just Salt Lake County was paying so much more that you couldn't fault an officer for making $10 more an hour,
right?
And so that's impressive that you guys were able to do some data and get that. Tell us how you got through COVID and the mandates. And I mean, what did the people of Twila City want versus what the county? What did you find during that time?
It was interesting because you'd have to go back to the influenza of 1918 to see anything even closely similar. And we were all kind of taken back. I think the whole country, we just didn't know what to expect. We had a lot of information coming from different directions. And as a council, we decided, look, let's just be safe. We don't know we're not health professionals. And so let's just be safe. And we thought, let's just adopt a method that keeps people safe. And that's the approach we took. Here, give me 1 second. I need to close my door. Otherwise, you're going to hear some weird cartoons playing. So yeah, that was tricky. And we were literally kind of fumbling through it. Right. And then
I think everyone was.
And then right when we thought it was just getting super weird, we had the earthquake, right? And it was like, wow, what else is going to happen? And I remember that the earthquake caused some damage to the old police station, and we were concerned about that. But luckily, the new police station was coming online, and so our officers were able to go into a building which is far better suited for what they need to do, and I think a little bit safer. And so it was just crazy. It was crazy trying to manage it, trying to manage kind of a little bit of the hysteria that was going on at the time, and also trying to ensure that our businesses were able to function, right? Because we had these like shutdowns where you couldn't go indoors. And so we tried to be a little bit proactive. We changed up. I sponsored some sign ordinance changes to allow small businesses to put banners out, right? Because they needed to get the word out. Hey, we're still open. Come on in. We need your business. We need to stay afloat. So we're trying to be creative and find ways to help our businesses survive. And again, I will credit the council that we were able to be creative and open-minded to find ways to do that. So, and we did, and we did the best we could. And I hope we never have to go through that again.
Well, until we got 1918, 2019. So what is it? 21, 20.
No, we've got about 6 months before something's coming back.
21,
right
20, we'll
election.
have the other century. What are some of the things you hope to achieve on the county council? What are some of your
Well,
goals
do you want
there?
to ask the question from?
We'll get to the comments here in a second, but yeah, what are some of your goals with the county council?
You know, the number one goal that I have is communication. And that goal comes from what I do for a living. As a special victims prosecutor, if I don't listen to my victims, whatever I do will not work. And I've learned that translates well into serving on a council. And when I was on city council, I took pride in giving people my phone number, not just during election season, but people had the phone number that they could reach me. And it was the phone that I actually carried, not some phone that's in some drawer that I pull out every 3 months. And so I really enjoyed interacting with people when they called and say, hey, you know what? There's these loose dogs, or, hey, why isn't there a stoplight in this intersection, or whatever they wanted to talk about. Because I truly believe that my job is actually to listen, and I need to make it easy for people to reach me. And when they reach me, I need to actually listen, return phone calls, return emails. And I think that's like the very basic job of someone who is elected. And I take pride in that. And I've learned a lot from listening to people. And I've hoped that during my time on the council, people felt comfortable to reach out, not feeling like, oh, I don't feel like he's approachable. So I've worked hard on that, and I want to continue that. And what I have found is I had great relationships with the city. When I ran for city council, one of the first things I did is I set up a time with each department head to meet with them and learn about what they do. When I'm running now, I set up a time to meet with every elected official in Tooele County, because I wanted to learn about what the treasurer does. What does a clerk do? What unique things do they have that are challenges? And one of the reasons is to educate myself, because I don't know. I'm not going to pretend. But the other thing is to build a relationship, because come budget season, if I have a good relationship, there's going to be a flow of information. It's going to be good communication. And when you don't have that, walls go up, and then that's where bickering and fighting happens. And so that's my number one. If I can't communicate, it doesn't matter what else I do. And so that's goal number one, not only with department heads, not with just with the public, but with the council itself. I'm going to treat them with dignity and respect, and because they deserve that. And as an elected official, people shouldn't log in and be embarrassed about the dialogue happening in a public meeting. And so that is important to me. I'm proud, again, in Tooele City, we did not have that. And again, that was a group effort, not just me. And so I hope to continue that if I were to be elected. Another big important factor is tax credits, right? I don't believe that you attract new businesses to Tooele by giving them tax credits. And I know that's kind of a belief.
Well, you might, but they don't stay, right? Once the credits run out.
Exactly. And so what did you gain? You gain not a lot of anything. And what I loved about Tooele City is we adopted a policy that we would not give tax credits, and we didn't for 4 years. And you know what happened? We got a lot of new businesses because there's this perception that you have to give it away to get businesses in. And that's simply not true. And because what we have in Tooele is unique. We have industrial, we have rail, we have highways, we have these connections and we have a lot of areas for development and manufacturing. We are valuable, and businesses know that. And so I think we need to take a little bit more ownership in realizing we don't have to give away the farm. Businesses will come. We need to be creative. We need to be proactive, but let's not give away tax credits that, like you mentioned, in 20 years, as soon as that tax credit ends, they're out of here. Why? Why wouldn't they? And because when you give those tax credits, guess where the burden falls? It falls on the property owners, right? And
yeah.
That's why it's important not to give it away. It doesn't matter the size of the business. If you're giving that tax credit, that's shooting yourself in the foot. So that's important.
So, Tony, with your experience on planning and zoning, and we've seen the growth in Tooele, but the county as a whole, we've seen Erta and Lake Point, even Stansbury. We all kind of, we've kind of gotten accustomed to the fact that Stansbury is a bedroom community, and Erta wants 5-acre lots, and Lake Point wants a little bit of commercial and big lots, but they want that control over the growth. This growth, water, the county's expansion, the federal lands, all of these things are huge issues on our county council. Right. Having met with them many times and sat through many meetings with them, with legislatures. And how do you see the county and its situation not only attracting business, but maybe getting some infrastructure put in there? And how do we grow in a healthy manner that will allow us to substantiate our population, but also, bring in more opportunities for our youth to work?
You know what? That's a great question. And the answer is going to seem simple, but the starting point is to listen. We look at the referendums, we look at the discord that has been going on, and not just this council, but previous commission. There's been a lot of discord. And as an attorney in a high conflict area, where me and the defense attorney, we are on opposite sides, but you can still disagree and get stuff done. But what happens is when you start the infighting and you start engaging in communication that alienates people, then the walls go up and the lawsuits get filed. And what needs to happen is our partners in Erta, Lake Point, Stansbury, they need to know that we actually are going to listen. And I think what's happened, and again, I'm not going to point fingers at particular people, but what's happened is there's certain levels of communication that have fallen apart and there's no trust. And so what happens? People retreat into their corners and say, you know what? This is not working out. We're going to go to battle. And again, I look at Erta. What happened was a complete failure of communication. And I think if people sat down and say, hey, I really want to hear what you have to say. And for me, I didn't grow up in Erta, and I want to learn what is important to Erta and listen to those perspectives before I jump to a decision. And so it's important before we make decisions that affect these communities, we understand them and that they're able to speak. And so that's something that has to be done day one, because if people don't trust the people who are elected, nothing gets accomplished and nobody is happy. That's the starting point.
And I have to say, because I was very, I didn't have a lot of hope for a part-time county council, and all the councilors know this, because here I wanted a lot of attention and I wanted it to be a full-time job. And I'll be honest, I know these guys put in full-time hours. A lot of them do, and with their jobs. And I'm so grateful for that, because I do feel like they've covered having they've got somebody at the Hill. They're highly in tune, and I've seen this council work better than I've seen any of our commissions in the past. And I mean, I've been really impressed. I mean, I know they probably bicker behind closed doors, but just from my perspective and many others that tune in, I see them working, even though I know they all don't agree. And what happens when, that thing with Erta and the temple and all of that, people started to draw their line in the sand, and this council got thrown in when that line was drawn and the battle was beginning. And I think once you decide to become a city, it's the county's job to let you become a city. And, that's why I've not wanted Stansbury to incorporate, because I want to just have that one layer of government, which is the county, rather than adding a city on top. But I think that as a councilman, I hope you're going to bicker on behalf of District 1 if it comes down to it. I hope you will make arguments and stand up for your district, because you are representing by design that district. But then, when my representative comes to the table with something that we need, growth is happening. People have to be prepared for it. And we're going to have probably some more intense issues coming up. We've got water that's an issue, and housing crisis. And one of our comments here is high property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
All this needs to be figured out, but we also have to be smart about how we raise taxes and not do it in 10 years when we haven't done it for 10 years.
Right.
I mean,
right. Absolutely.
We've got to make sure our county, employees are getting paid fairly, and places that are facing growth, if we don't do it in an organized and slow and effective, smart function, we're doing a disservice to all of us, because then it has to be redone, and we keep staying in our little cities rather than a county. So I'm hopeful that you're not worried about fighting. That happens on a council, I'm sure, but this is a separate district, so I assume you'll all have different things you're going to have to argue about.
And I agree with 95% of what you're saying. The one area I don't agree is there is no place for bickering. Bickering is when you let your pride get in the way of communication. I can disagree.
I get that.
I can disagree with somebody, but still treat them with the respect that they deserve, and let them know I will listen, as opposed to shutting down or acting like, well, if you're not going to vote for my bill, I'm not going to vote for yours. That's how I define bickering. And there is no place for that. We are grown adults, and we can communicate. And I'll let you know, I will advocate for what's important for my district. There's no question. I do that in my job. I stand before juries and argue and do that. But I do it in a way that's effective, not a way that shuts people down, but in a way that people listen. Because
that makes so much sense. Because you're right.
That's my approach.
Is different than an argument
Where-
or a debate.
where
That's
is
excellent.
Where is the lines for District 1 drawn?
It's basically the west side of Tooele, almost up to
West side.
bordering Overlake area. So basically,
Okay,
from
so
Overlake,
where I live.
yeah, you're my people.
All right. I'm your people.
Too bad he's not a delegate
Yeah.
or a Republican.
Or a voter.
We got a lot of work.
For
Jared. We
president.
got a lot of work.
You said you vote local.
I vote local.
Well,
I've
then
never
you're a
voted for
voter.
president, and I don't vote for
Says
local
he's not a
very
voter,
often.
but he votes.
Yeah. I think the last time I voted was in a primary. Oh, well, the last time I voted for president, it was Clinton's second term.
I was curious about this high property taxes, because 75% of our taxes go to education. We kind of know that. And, I live in Stansbury Park. My taxes feel like they just keep going up. My mom lives in Tooele. She's on the other side of Maine, though. She's not in your district. But I know that
She's
the
one
city
of
had
those people.
the city had quite a big tax jump a few years ago. That
Right.
was culture shock for a lot of people. Stansbury Park just had a huge tax jump in our agencies. I think people are exhausted, Tony. If I'm being honest, people are, and you probably are too. We're so sick of taxes. We understand the need for education, for law enforcement, for roads and streets, things like that. But how can you address, we never get to own our property, even if we pay our homes off, and the property taxes are just going up and up and up.
I agree.
What kind of control would you have, or what kind of say do you have in that? What are your thoughts?
So the council has control over over county taxes, right? And that's straight up. Tooele City has control over Tooele City taxes. County has county. State has state control over state taxes. So it really comes down to this. And before I was an attorney, I was a stockbroker. I had my Series 7 and my Series 63 licenses, and so I was in the world of finance. And so numbers are important. Budgeting is important. And here's the fallacy. So what you were talking about in Tooele City was 2018, an 82% tax increase. And why did it happen? Well, there's something called the certified tax rate. And if you don't hold the certified tax rate, it's you go into a deficit. And eventually, and you offset the deficit by either raising taxes or drawing from your general funds, which is kind of like a savings account. And so you can only draw from your general funds for so long before you're just like, we have to raise taxes, otherwise we're going to be insolvent. And so what happened in Tooele was the certified tax rate kept falling and it wasn't addressed. And so people were happy because there was no tax increase, but it came at a cost, and that cost was 82% in 2018. And so what needs to happen is, and again, I'm going to talk about Tooele City because I'm proud of what they did, is they implemented a program where we would meet at the beginning of the year and talk about our priorities. And one of the priorities that Tooele City Council held was we weren't going to let the certified tax rate fall. We were going to do everything in our power to hold it so we could be proactive for the future. And then we were going to look at our budget and say, okay, we're going to hold the certified tax rate so you departments know that's not going to change. So you know what you need to do on your end to kind of balance the budget. And so we had those discussions early. The problem is when you don't do it early, you have this mass chaos right before budget season. And all of a sudden you're saying, hey, departments, you need to cut 10% and
Right.
you need to do it in 3 weeks. And that is never going to work. And what happens is people throw their walls up. People are just like, look, that's not fair. And then you have the infighting. And so it really is about being proactive and taking ownership of your budget. And that needs to happen early. And so the council needs to sit down and say, hey, here's our priorities to the elected officials and the county manager. And that's the starting point. So you know what the end point is going to be. And so what that means is there are some years where you might have to have a tax increase, but it's a small incremental increase as opposed to an 80%. People, and you can explain away and say, okay, look, this is why we're doing it. We want to be responsible because there's things that you can't address and budget for, such as inflation, right? Like last year or two ago, we had 7% inflation. How in the world are you supposed to be able to address that? That's just the cost of things went up and you had to address that. And
No,
so
just the price of gas at that point. I mean, just to fuel your police cars and your county cars and all of that. I mean, that's a small little fraction, the snow plows, but that is such a huge impact. The fluctuating gas prices, the fact that when you're doing a build, for a county building, the cost of just plywood was so ridiculous.
Exactly.
Biden tells you though that the inflation is going down, the inflation that he says doesn't exist.
He doesn't say it near as coherent as you just did.
I would love to know, I know you're a Republican, but how you feel about the party platform and its ideals and what you see in you and what you see in it that brings you to the party.
Well, I'm a child of the 80s, right? I grew up under Reagan. Reagan was my hero. And I've been proud to have been a Republican my whole life. I've never changed parties. I respect the other party, but it doesn't align with what I believe. I look through, when we were at our caucus meetings, right? We read the party platform, and I agree with the party platform. And things such as being fiscally responsible, jury trials, the Constitution, those aren't like just talking points. I live and die by the Constitution. That's my job. And I uphold it. And I've sworn an oath to uphold it. And I don't take that lightly. And so when we talk about the Constitution, it's something I know and I love and I've studied. And it's why I do what I do, because people have rights and those rights need to be upheld. And I know for, when I was on city council, it was a nonpartisan race. So I never talked about being a Republican because you're not you're unaffiliated. I mean,
Right.
you're nonpartisan is a better term as a city councilman. And I served all of Tooele City. But being a Republican is not something new to me. It's not something that's been trendy. It's something that I align with, and I always have. And things like, I don't kneel, I stand for the flag. I respect it. That flag means a lot to me because far greater people than me have died for it. I believe in the rule of law. I believe that we need to uphold lawful activities. We need to respect our police. We need to support them. We don't go to public disorder. We don't believe in rioting. And that's not the way. I believe in freedom of speech. I will defend someone's right, even if what they're saying is something that I am totally against. Why? Because it's their right. That's the First Amendment. They get to say that, and I get to defend their right to say it. And so that's not a joke to me. And the Second Amendment, that's part of the Constitution, right? That's how it was written, and it's not my job to change it because I believe in an originalist view. How it was written then is how it should be interpreted now. Because if you fall away from that, then the Constitution means nothing because it means that anyone can say, now it means this. And what do we have? If we go down that road, we have nothing. And so I believe that the Constitution should be interpreted as it was written when it was written, not reinterpret, because then we have nothing. And so that's something that's important to me. And I'm grateful for. I think the Constitution is inspired by God, our creator, and it's something we need to uphold because it's unique in the world. And once we let it fall, then we really don't have much of anything. That's one of the greatest things of our country, and we need to defend it and ensure that it's upheld. So
I love that. I mean, that's easy, right? When you believe in something, it's easy to talk about it. And when it's literally your job, that makes it even probably easier. So you obviously love what you do, so you don't work a day in your life. And now you want to do a real job like county councilor. It's pretty cool that someone loves their job and believes in it so much. I think that's extraordinary.
All right. You want to ask this one?
Yeah, let's just hit it. You see the comment that says, thank you for coming.
Mhm.
The 2020 general craziness, we call that the summer of love, included BLM marches and riots. I remember that you were part of that in Tooele. Why did you participate in that? I've always wanted to ask you.
That's a great question. I appreciate it being asked. So I was asked, as was every single elected official when that occurred. And it is my duty as someone who is elected to go to a place where people have concerns. And so I didn't turn away from that. Do I support all the beliefs of BLM? No. Do I think that there are areas that need to be addressed? Absolutely, just like anything else. And so I did speak, and I joined, I want to say it was either 2 or 3 of the county commissioners. They spoke as well. And a lot of people seem to have forgotten that. But I was the last speaker. And my points were this. I told the group that if you want meaningful change, you go and vote. If you want meaningful change, you run for office. And if you really want meaningful change, you join the organizations that you think need to be changed. Change happens within, not by rioting. And a lot of people have asked me, well, how can you be a Republican if you speak at a BLM event? And I want you to know that a real leader goes where there is discord, where there is confusion, where there is people who are wanting to hear. A Republican doesn't hide. They go to the event and they speak what they believe. On that day, I didn't surrender my Republican card. I made it shine brighter because I spoke to what I believed. And you know what? They listened. They didn't boo me. And they realized, hey, this guy he can stand next to me and support things that need to change, but doesn't surrender what he believes. And I'm proud of that. And at the very end of that event, they all took a knee for 7 minutes. And I don't take a knee for anyone except my creator. And I stood there respectfully, not disrespecting them. That was their right. That was their freedom of expression. But I stood there because I didn't need to take a knee. But I felt the need that as an elected official, I was not going to hide behind a door and say, oh, look at these crazy people. I was going to go to them and speak of what I believe in, being lawful, rule of law in important things. So that's what I did. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I did that. I was the only one on city council, and this is not disparaging other council members, but I feel leaders need to lead. And that means you go out, that you don't go away. And so that's how I plan to lead. And if I'm invited to speak at something that's lawful, right? I'm not going to go to some chaos. If it was rioting, I'm not going to be running around in riots. But if there's a lawful event where there is the ability to speak, why wouldn't I speak about what I believe and what I think?
You bring some light to a potentially dark situation, and you bring some hope to a hopeless group that is looking and seeking hope. And I can see that. And we didn't have a riot in our city. That's because we had great armed citizens that made sure that everything was.
It's interesting, as I remember looking, we tried to get the girl that ran it on the show, but she chose not to come on. But I went and had breakfast with her a couple times, and we chatted, and she and I got along great, but Dave made her mad somehow, which is what happened. But anyways, it's great. It's interesting how both sides see the other side and read into what the other side did. And I didn't go to either of them because I live by a policy that I don't go to stupid places. And anywhere where people gather over emotional things, that by definition is a stupid place. Just,
For you.
It's a stupid place as a person.
I wouldn't call the Boston Tea Party a stupid place.
Well,
I wouldn't call Lexington and Concord a stupid place. That's where groups of people stood for what they believed.
Right now,
for me,
right now, as a person who comports himself in a certain way, I don't join into those things. Just personal policy. But I find it interesting the way both sides see that. We did not have a riot out here. We had a march.
Yeah.
And we did not have people subduing other people's First Amendment.
Right.
We had people who lined places that they were concerned about, places with statues. A couple years build up to that, we'd had a lot of issues with statues becoming the victims of large groups in the United States.
Sure.
So I don't see as either side did anything wrong. I'm saying that outright. I don't think that, and I don't think they were directly affiliated with BLM, our group that marched out here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were. Talking to the girl that put it together, she wasn't. She was a sideline supporter of BLM until she noticed that BLM means buy large mansions, and then she gave up on that. But she's a supporter of the message. But it's interesting. Both sides see it as
stereotypical.
They read into it what the other side did. Her side felt like everyone lined up around that park there on Vine and Main, that they were subduing their First Amendment speech. And I said, wait a second. So they weren't. Well, mean things were said. I'm sure mean things were said on both sides by individuals. But the group they had seen statues, military veteran statues, fall victim to such groups. Not your group, but such groups. And the other side.
They'd seen the riot in Salt Lake not too far before that, where officers were actually hurt.
And then the other group that showed up, they felt like any gathering was just a riot and just unruly, which our group that marched wasn't unruly. They marched and danced and
I think it's good. I think it's good because right. The county commission,
and I think it's good you showed up. And I'm going to say that outright.
Our commissioners did speak, a couple of them, and I think it's just a good steward. You are everybody's. I mean, even though you're running for District 1, on the whole scheme of things, you're representing the county.
Well, wait a second. Now that you're in District 1, my district, you got to show up. I mean, Gotta,
So the county, you represent everyone as a whole. And I want to get back into representation. My biggest fear when we did change over from the full-time to part-time was our ability to be at the Hill during session and make sure that our voice is there. And, this part-time job, these guys, the county council got someone to lobby for them on their behalf, giving us a seat at the table. And I know that our legislators are phenomenal when it comes to working with our county council. They're highly approachable. And right now, Celeste Malloy, she's highly approachable. She works closely with our county council, and that's building relationships like you talk about. How do you see representation at the Hill?
That's a really good question. It's it's like you read my mind. So right before law school, I worked for Legislative Research and General Counsel. So that was a legal branch of the legislature. So I worked there for almost 3 years. I got to go to session, got to go on the floor and watch that very closely. And I didn't know how that would benefit me later in life, but now I do. And what a lot of,
that's just me sharing your website.
Well,
that threw me off for a second. I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
While you talk, I just want everyone to have a chance to see it while you talk.
Right. So here's my thoughts in a nutshell. If you want meaningful representation on the Hill, you actually have to go up yourself. And you don't go when a vote is being done on the floor. You go to the committee meetings and you sign up to speak. Because if you want change, you have to get in early, not late. And while I agree it is a part-time position, I think council members need to commit. And there's a way to do it. And here's what I would propose. You divvy up, there's 5 council members. You divvy up the areas that bills typically fall in: crime, property, municipal, water. There's all these areas. And a council member gets a topic. And then they track the bills that are going to affect our county. And then they go up. They work with our elected officials, right? Or our state reps and state senators, and we work with our lobbyists, but we need to get up there too. No one lobbies better than somebody who's vested in the community. And I think our county council needs to do that and make the time, because that's part of the commitment. That's part of our duty of representing, is actually going there. No one can speak better about our county than us. I don't care who the lobbyist is. If they're not from Tooele, they're not from Tooele. We can speak with passion because we live here, and we can go to these committee meetings and say, hey, you know what this bill is missing? It's missing this. And we're not speaking from a paper because we're getting paid to speak. We're speaking because it's our community that we care about. And so I think we can do that. I realize there's time constraints, but we can do that if we are selective and pick and choose the bills that will most affect us.
A lot of them have full-time jobs. I would hope that I love that we have a seat at the table. That's something we had under our commissioners, and, they were appointed to certain boards, and that did help. But again, I was pleasantly surprised at the fact that we really didn't skip a beat in the change. I expected it to be chaos. Our county council just kind of jumped in, and if there was a lot of chaos there, I don't think we saw it like I anticipated. On that, I would like to talk about collaboration, because one thing that Tooele City doesn't have that the county does is a lot of cities within it.
Right.
And to work together. And how do you see, collaboration is needed. The county needs cities on board, all of us going towards the same goal for the betterment of the county, because we all live here. But we need collaboration from Tooele City, from Stockton, from Grantsville, from Lake Point. Everybody's got to kind of be on the same page. And how do you see you being able to establish some collaboration in that front?
And you're absolutely right. I think a lot of times we get protective, right? And in Tooele City, we're Tooele City, right? We have our needs and our goals. But on the council level for the county, everyone's on your team, right? We are all in the same county. And so the way to do that is actually be proactive in reaching out to these cities. When we had the Meet the Candidates event, was it last week?
Mhm.
I was grateful that Grantsville Mayor said, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And then my answer is, "Of course." And I was grateful that he wanted to share some concerns he had. And I want my reputation to be, you can approach Tony Graff. He's not going to shut you down. He's not going to just listen and not really listen. I actually want to hear. I want to hear what Grantsville needs, because my vote is proportionally the same as the representative from Grantsville, right? We all have the same vote and we all vote on everything. So
Right.
what happens in Grantsville is important to me, because I do not want to make an uneducated vote. And so I would want Grantsville, Erda, Lake Point, all of our communities to know, I want to hear, and I'm not going to vote ignorantly. And so that means I actually have to make the effort and reach out. And I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to go meet with councils and mayors and say, hey, I want you to know you can call me, but let's sit down and listen. I want to listen to your concerns. And I think that's the very first point, because once a city, a government, a mayor knows, hey, that person is actually going to take my call and listen. And I may not agree, right? I may not agree after I do all my research, but they're going to respect that I'm trying to listen. And they're going to feel more comfortable approaching that person again and again, because they know that person actually wants to listen and do right for the county. And again, I'm not always going to vote with what they want, right? Because I have to weigh the needs of the county. There's a lot of work, but I want them to know that I am going to listen. Because when I was in public meetings in Tooele City Council, there are some times that the public comment changed my view, and that's good. That's the way it should
That's
be.
really good, because the public is who has hired you, and it is them that you have to think about at the end of the day. And whether they have a D or an R or an I next to their name, it should not matter. These collaborations are so important. And, from the party's perspective, we would love to have, meetings with all our electeds, because I think the information that our council needs from the Senate, like they need to know what bills are going on that are going to affect the county before those bills hit the floor, for that reason, so they can weigh in. They need to know what's happening on our federal level with our lands and with, what's the government doing. And so our congresswoman has been, highly engaged with our council. Our council has been great at outreach and getting information. They seem to be the information council, whereas in the past our prior commissioners maybe have not invested in trying to get data before making decisions. And so they've tried to be a well-informed council. A lot of projects going on within the county, and I see the county going in a good place. I'm curious with you, what is it you want to accomplish at the end of the day? Is there something that you see that you could accomplish on behalf of, as a member of that team on the county level?
Absolutely. And this is a general comment about the state of affairs on a national, state, and local level. There is a great distrust of government and of elected officials, straight up.
What?
Yeah.
No, say it ain't so.
And
I mean,
unfortunately, you're absolutely right.
How often do they say one thing and actually do that?
No, they name it a bill and they do the opposite.
Yeah, or do they come up with a plan that says, turn the sky brown and call it the blue sky plan? I don't know where this is coming from.
What are you drinking, my friend?
Yeah. I mean, what are you
I
drinking?
know. You know what? I'm not drinking a ginger ale.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not drinking water either.
And that's all good. That's all good. That's what makes your show so great. So for me, it's simply this. Before I can actually accomplish anything, I have to earn people's trust, straight up. I'm not gonna accomplish any of my goals if people don't trust me. I'm talking about the council, fellow members, fellow elected officials on the county level, cities,
businesses.
There has to be that trust, and I have to earn that. That doesn't come to me if I win an election. I have to earn that by effort. And so that is goal number one, that I actually make the effort to reach out and engage. Because if I don't, I will never gain traction. and no one's going to care. And I do have plans on what I want to accomplish. I actually believe we should implement a rotation schedule on replacing equipment for the county. Why? Because if we don't, we have these peaks and valleys with our budget. Suddenly we have 10 sheriff's vehicles that need to be replaced that we didn't anticipate. And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just giving you an example. And so we need to be on a rotation schedule on how we manage our equipment. And what does that mean? That means we have a more stable budget. And if we have a more stable budget, that means we can manage taxes better, as opposed to being thrown to the winds of chaos when we just don't have that in place. And on a council level, and after reading the county code, we have an inventory system that's in place, but we don't have a replacement program that's in place. And that would benefit us across the board in every department. Other things that are important to me is, again, the policy of not giving tax credits to new businesses. Again, why? Because that affects our budget. We have more influx of sales tax from these businesses that otherwise we would have given away. How does that affect us? It lowers our tax burden. And so that's important. In regards to development and growth, we need to listen. IRTA is different than Lake Point. Lake Point's different than Tooele City. Grantsville's different than all the other places. And so it's important for me to listen, and it's becoming more narrow, right? Because with the incorporation of Lake Point and IRTA, the county has less development areas, right? Those are no longer our areas. But the areas we still have control on, we need to listen to the people who live there and to make good policy decisions. And let me give you a quick example. Right by North Lake Elementary, there are these like little micro farms with livestock and horses. And we had a developer come in and say, hey, we want to make it from rural to R7, which is residential development. And I'm grateful that that community came out and said, hey, we only have so much of this land. And once we lose it, we lose it. And I'm very proud of the rural heritage of Tooele. And so it's important for me that we retain it as best as we can. Obviously, growth is going to happen, but we can manage that growth. And managing growth begins by listening to the people who actually live there and then setting the priorities and being consistent and following through. And so
that's the hard part, Tony. In some of these areas, and I'm with you 100%. I'm thinking of IRTA back in the debacle times because they seem to have settled down a bit. But, I know that I was in meetings where both the commission and then the county were listening, and they were actively listening. And the problem was that consistent part. You have a group of people that all wanted different things. Mm-hmm. And it's their job to come to one place and bring it to the county. And they were struggling with that and coming to what they wanted. And some had been there their entire lives, and some had been there 1 year and wanted to change the fact that, well, we don't want farm animals living next door to us. And the ones that bought farms out there or livestock are saying, this is what we're scared of, this is why we want. So, planning and zoning, there's constant, people aren't on the same page. We live in the same community, but I don't want to live next to a farm. But then again, I would rather live next to a farm than next to a big office building, right? And I'd rather have homes put up, maybe townhomes that my elderly parents can live in, or my kids when they first get married. I'd like to see some real estate coming out into the county, but all these things, that's just too cute. I can't even stand it. My teeth hurt. That's so sweet.
All right. You're right. You can't be everything.
People on the same page is a big problem. And you've got, if you read the socials and people talking about a potential inland port or a satellite port, that could really benefit the county a lot. And some people realize that, and some businesses realize that. And the idea of making people less, that are able to commute or not have to commute around the mountain, and maybe they can start businesses here, and maybe we pull from this workforce and all these things, the dream for the county. But then you've got a whole nother side saying, we don't want it. It's going to cause pollution. It's going to cause traffic jams, and we don't want it here. So how do you, I know listening is great, but the reality of some of these meetings is you've got people neighbor against neighbor
Right.
on the
Absolutely.
ideas of what they want. So I'm wondering what your vision is and how to get people maybe to come to a consensus where they both give a little.
Right. And sometimes it's simply not possible. And so the first point that I think needs to be recognized, you cannot be everything to everyone. It's impossible. And that's, if you do that, you're setting yourself up for failure.
And you're in the wrong business as a politician because you will upset a lot of people regardless of what you do.
And you're right, but it's how you engage with those people and how you manage that. There's ways of communicating that you can say, look, I'm not going to go for your position, and they're going to be livid, but there's a way to do it in a respectful manner where they felt like, oh, you actually listened, you don't agree with me, but you actually gave me reasons why that makes sense. So here's where it begins, and this is going back to my planning and zoning days. And one is making sure that the planning and zoning makes sense, and looking it over again. And I know that's revisited every now and then, but what happens and where the chaos happens is when you start mucking with the planning and zoning that was already established. And if it was established that way and there was a reason for it, you shouldn't deviate from it. It's when you start being unpredictable that people start losing their minds. But if you have an area that's zoned for commercial or zoned high density, then you hold to the plan and you build it because that's what's permissible. And sometimes you have to revisit and say, okay, the needs are changing. We might need to change this particular zoning area. And that's where you engage the public and educate the public and listen. So you're right, you can't be everything to everyone. But one of the most important things you can be as an elected official is consistent. And people will manage consistency far better than chaos. And that's what sometimes happens, is this whipsaw approach of like, oh, well, suddenly we are changing from rural to high density. And
that freaks people out. Even the words high density gives people a really bad feeling in a town like ours.
And it should cause panic if it's not planned, because if you're going to do high density, what you should be doing is phasing into it. So you don't have high density next to a farm. You might have a farm next to a 1 acre lot, and then transition to a half acre lot, then transition to a quarter acre, and then eventually you get to the high density. So you have this appropriate buffer. That's good planning and zoning. Bad planning and zoning is suddenly you whipsaw and say, oh, I know this is rural, but we need high density right next to you. That's horrible. And that's not consistent. And people want consistency. They want to be able to say, I see what you're doing and I don't agree, but at least it makes sense. And that's the important part. And so again, you're not going to please everyone. You're not going to have world peace in these meetings when you're changing zoning. But if it makes sense and it's consistent, people are able to accept better. That's been my experience. It's when you can't and you're not consistent, people understandably and rightfully lose their minds.
Well, that's people in general. I mean, I look at sometimes on the 411, you have the same people complaining that we don't have a Costco. Why don't we have a Costco? And then they're also complaining about growth. And I'm saying, to get a Costco, you need to have like a population of 200,000 people. Right. So do you want to live in a town of 80,000 or do you want to live in a town of 200,000? Because then you'll get your Costco. Costco's not coming. You'll drive to West Valley. They've proven that. They do market research. They understand that. So educating the people in a way that is kind. I mean, I'm probably less kind than you are. I get pretty blunt with people because it's exhausting, but that's what's highly important. And I think having a council that is approachable, and, I have been trying to get them on town hall spree, and they have been more than willing. And we just got caught up with caucus and everything. But, we have a group of guys on that council that are excellent when it comes to transparency as far as the party. And they've been on the show every time we've asked, and we've brought up the issues with them. I would hope that if you were to win, that you would offer that exact promise to us, that transparency would be important and that you would be prepared to. We just want to educate the people on what's going on in the county. And we would hope you would give that same dedication that our current councilors have given us.
Well, I think there's no other way. And I've been grateful that Jared has invited me throughout these years, and I've never declined is, and I've always answered the questions, even though they may be a little uncomfortable. I believe that if I'm going to put myself out there, then people have a right to ask me questions and I should answer them. If I don't want to answer them, I shouldn't be running for office. And so I'm happy to do that. And I believe transparency is very important. And I have no problem with that. I think that's the way it should be, because that's how trust begins. No transparency, no trust. It's impossible.
Well, then our lives are far more affected by local government, and that's just how it is, folks. And if you are interested in learning more about Tony, we want you to go to tonyforutah.com.
Tony for Tooele.
Oh, sorry, for Tooele.
She's in caucus brain.
Yeah.
Come November, we can have a minute of rest, but until then, it's going to be insane. But tonyfortooele.com, go check him out.
I assume that you take donations or you like volunteers. We encourage people to do what they can if they support a candidate.
Sure.
State delegates that are, county delegates that are watching. This is your race for District 1, and it's actually the only race we actually are hosting at convention.
Yeah.
And my delegate pool is 18. It is very small.
We have 18 people that we will credential for voting. But
have you been able to reach out to them and meet with them?
I was grateful for the Meet the Candidates event. I had a chance to interact with quite a few, as well as reaching out to them, and I appreciate that. And I would also like to give my phone number out. I'm happy to take it. My number is 801-997-0092. And I hope people actually save it and use it, because
0092.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
and you've been very gracious with your time. Every time I've said, hey, you want to come on and talk about this, that, and the other, you've always came on. You bring some ginger beer, which was why that was mentioned earlier. Remember, it had quite a spice to it. It's good stuff. But everyone,
I didn't get any ginger beer. Is that got alcohol
you were
in
here.
it?
This was no
alcohol.
Ginger ale?
No, Tony's a good boy. He come in and he interrupted my brain cell killing stuff for some spicy soda.
Well, and I feel like before we let you go, is there anything else you want to tell us about you? So you've been a stockbroker, you've been in DC, you've worked on the Hill in government, you're a prosecutor, and you've lived in Samoa. And I mean, geez, you've lived like 3 lives and you're still so young.
Well, I wouldn't say so young, but I am grateful. And I think one of my most important roles is a father. I'm so grateful for my 3 kids, and they bring me back to center. And so of all the roles, that's the one I'm most proud of. And I'm just grateful.
They're still they're still little and so cute. And you have a young family, which is really,
I
miss the days.
Whispered into your ear, had a secret for
that's
you.
so cute. That's just too sweet.
Yeah.
I miss those days. Now it's like, Mom, Mama.
Mine's 28, so now he just comes and hangs out.
There you go.
Everyone, tonyfortooele.com. You can reach out to him on there. He's got his links to like his X or Twitter.
Anybody
now,
have any
his
questions?
Facebook.
Type your comments, because this is
phone number.
the time. We've left the telephone number if you want to reach out to him.
801-997-0092.
And this is for District 1. So if you're a county delegate, but you're not in District 1, then Tony would not be you wouldn't be voting a convention for him. But again, if you have issues you want to bring up with him, he will be speaking at county convention, and that's where we'll be doing the vote. Will you be having a booth at the convention, sir?
I think so. Setup is 5 o'clock.
Yeah, anytime after 5.
Okay.
Bring your own table.
Absolutely.
Because we've invited, the reception starts at 6 p.m. So we invite the public come and meet Tony in person. Come and talk to him. We got a reception from 6 to 7, and the public is welcome to stay for the entire convention and just see how the sausage gets made when it comes to party politics.
Oh, and I can't wait
where
till
we choose
caucus is
our
over. Crazy
caucus has
time.
been over. I don't know.
Or this convention, sorry. Till this convention's over. This
There's
is just
2
crazy
conventions.
time. Oh, I know. This is awful.
So I want to thank you for coming on this show, and I appreciate your support that you have shown the party over the years. I know you were in a seat that was nonpartisan, but you've always been supportive of the party, and I feel really glad to know that you know you were representing Tooele City. But I knew the party that you assimilated with, or whatever.
Assimilate.
Is it assimilated?
Affiliated.
Affiliated? It was a big
You
A
can
word.
if you're the board, you can assimilate.
I know. Just come in.
We don't do night shows very often.
That's
but
right.
Man, did you assimilate
After
with
you
our
say
party?
assimilate, say we. That just bends it right in.
Well, I want to thank you both. Holly, I know you do a lot for the party, and a lot of your work isn't recognized, but I really appreciate it. And
Thank
over
you.
your third term or second term? I can't tell. You've been there so
Mine?
long, doing so well.
I think I'm in my 6th or 5th.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
No,
here you go.
yeah, 5th.
And
Because
Jared,
I'm crazy, obviously.
and so thank you for what you do, Jared. Thank you for I love that you guys put together the show. I think it's important, and you've brought in a lot of candidates, and so thank you for being an outlet for education. I think it's much needed.
We appreciate you.
I'm like a Pokemon gymnast. I want to catch them all. I want all the candidates to come on. I want everyone to hear everyone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We believe an educated populace makes for better representation.
Yeah.
It's
Or
really
as
true.
good a representation as you can get.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, guys. I appreciate your time, and it's been a lot of fun speaking with you guys tonight.
Yes, it has.
was
Thank
so
you, Tony.
fun.
And we'll see you soon. Good,
we'll see you
sir.
on Friday.
All right,
Yeah.
Friday night. All right, guys, take care.
Have
Thanks,
a good
Tony.
one. All right, everyone. That's Tony Graff, Matt Hymas.
Any takeaways? Do you have any?
I want to dig in more to this Nebo elementary. Was it elementary or middle school?
Mount Nebo Middle School. But
Middle
I just want to
school?
talk about the candidates for
Oh,
a
okay.
second. Wow. We've got, with Matt Hymas, that was a great interview.
Yep.
I appreciate the comments you guys have left.
Yes.
Nicolene, I know we're going to be seeing a lot more of you. Nicolene
Good. She needs to come on soon.
She will. But
She's
we're
got
going
to
to
get grilled.
We're going to get her after we get some of the candidates that have a race. Hers is non-contested.
Yeah, I'm warming up the
in
seat.
the party. And so we definitely going to get her on. But, you know, Nicolene has got so much education background and Capitol Hill background. And I mean, she'll blow your mind with what she knows. So,
I know at the Meet the Candidate, me and her husband chatted quite a bit. But where I'm not a delegate or even a member of the party, I like to float around the outskirts and talk to support staff.
No, and I like to talk to everyone because we're just that way. We're just people. But I really appreciated. I think that we've been able to talk now to all the candidates in the race for school board, and we've talked to so many candidates.
All the Republican candidates.
Well, that's all that's going on until Friday for me.
I know, but
when we start moving,
we're reaching out to the Democrats. You guys we want them to have the opportunity to come on as well.
But we've got to get our primary candidates first, and the Democrats already have theirs. So ours is a process, and it is long, and it feels like a lot, but it's important. The work we do is important as delegates, and that is to get the best candidates we can find to run and to get good people to run. We're so lucky. I mean, there are some really difficult races that are ahead, and we do know, we'll mention that.
Yes.
But we just want to thank you guys because you tuned in and you participated, and we are excited for Friday. So again, we extend the invitation. we are going to have Scott Wardle on the show on Friday.
Mhm.
He is also running for District 1, and he is our incumbent. So he is actually serving on the county council currently. So he will be on at 2.
Yep, he'll be on at 2.
And we will have an early show on Friday because
we'll go live at 2 and probably cut off at probably like 4, maybe 3:30 or 4, so that Holly can get over there to her convention and do.
Are we going to go live at convention?
No, I don't think we need to, because everyone that's going to be involved in watching it will be there.
Oh, I doubt that. We've got people.
Maybe
right
we'll
now
do
that-
little lives, but I don't know.
You're exhausted.
Well, I don't really like just wandering around into crowds with a camera pointed at people. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
And
having a
you
place
won't be
to
there.
sit.
You'll be off and
Yeah,
about doing your thing.
I try to
So,
do both, but
Who wants to just sit and listen to me
What
prattle
if-
on?
Tim Jimenez said he would be your co-host if you wanted to do
We'll talk about it later.
a sit down.
Let's talk about it later. But yeah, we look forward to talking to Scott. Always a good conversation.
That's always really good and always informative. That's the thing, you guys. We have got our current local government is great, and it's, I love when new people are coming to challenge. I always think that the challenge is good because it really helps us know what's going on, and it just keeps everyone on their toes. And I think that I think we've got an incredible group here. We're grateful for all of you tuning in, and our show's only grown. And we just hope that if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe, because that will help you get notifications.
If you're watching on anything, like, subscribe, share it with a friend, or I don't know what all the stuff is. And if I had said anything tonight to offend you,
What?
I'm not sorry.
You were on your best behavior. I haven't
I'm
seen
not
you
sorry.
so well. You didn't mention the G word once.
Well, this is local government. What do I have to mention it for?
That's true. Oh my gosh, good point.
They're
He
not.
usually will drop the guillotine word.
They're not saying, look, this might offend people. They're not saying they're never going to do something on a show in my house, sitting next to me, and then doing it before the month is ended. And I'm not saying that I'm hurt or burnt or damaged, but I'm a little hurt and burnt and damaged about that. There's a lot of questions I have as to why do we keep coming across this over and over? And that doesn't happen on our local level. I'm sure when you get a population size, that's when it tends to happen. And national, forget about it. Those guys, they couldn't find their butt if their hands were in their back pockets.
No, I understand. And I think that a lot of people are fed up. A lot of people are tired of the same old, and they're tired of being lied to by politicians.
We're just chattel to them. We are literally chattel.
But we are the answer to that, folks. Who we put in those seats and how we hold these people accountable, that is the answer. So we can't give up. We have to keep going. Don't watch it burn. You've got to stay hopeful, because we've got to be on top of it, and we've got to be prepared to fire people in government that do not,
sad to say,
do what they promise.
And that's
hard to do.
Doesn't this give you, like, I'm feeling a bit schizophrenic about this, because I have never had a representative so available.
I understand.
But I'm finding that, can I trust my representative?
I hope so.
I'm feeling schizophrenic
I'm sure
right now.
there's so much more to this story, though. That's another thing. You get into government, you don't know what you don't know.
That's
you
why
have
we
to
need to
learn
have
it.
open and honest
And-
government. We can't have all these lies. You've got to go into the secret room and sign a whole bunch
You're
of
right.
paperwork, and
It's
then
all got to be on camera.
and then if we're
They
gonna
should all be wired with cameras.
seriously,
body
and then
cams.
if we're going to show it to you, it's got to be redacted, every fourth word. And come on.
We can do better. We need to do better. And how to do better is to get engaged, understand what's happening, and just stay on top of our politicians, because our local government is approachable. They but again, they run into you in stores. You know when their meetings are. They're very transparent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a reason a lot of them are running unopposed because they have done a great job.
You've got no reason to argue to oppose them. Like, keep it up, you know.
But when we branch out to state,
gets a little sketchier.
Yeah.
And then when we go to national,
we've just seen some things that we'd like to fix, and I'm starting here in the county first. We branch out to state next, and then federal. But again, we're going to need to get the White House back, folks, and we're going to need to get both majorities back. And all I'm saying is, if we as a community choose to give those people jobs again and fill the House, the Senate, and the White House, and Republicans screw it up, that's when I'll probably be black-pilled and just lose it, because we cannot afford it. America is at stake.
Republicans screw it up again.
I think the blurred line in DC is so bad.
Again, because they screwed it up last time. They screwed it up the time before that every time. Both parties
That's
just screwed up because
be
these are just talking points for power. They don't honestly care about it. But anyways, that's the show, guys.
We've had some great senatorial candidates.
Sure. And then they get run out.
The Senate, well, you decide as a delegate if they move on to the next or not. So I hope that delegates,
have you dug deeper into that Santorum guy out of New York? Is it Santorum? The Hispanic guy that they voted out.
No, but getting rid of him was nuts because it left a wide open.
Well, it wasn't just that. He was calling out congressmen on insider trading. It looks like, I'm not saying it is, but from the outside looking in, it looks like they got rid of him because he was making waves against their personal bank accounts. Is that what those recent
committees were about?
I don't know.
Because they've done some committees regarding insider trading. And
yeah. Insider trading. What do they all go in there and sit down and go, keep it up, and then back out?
They're like, I want your accountant because I need to know how to spend money. You guys, Wednesday night special show. This is a lot during a week when we're going crazy. We know you're going crazy, and you guys have had, especially delegates, you guys have been busy every single night. I want to thank the Tooele Chamber of Commerce today. They had an event where they brought the legislators. So we had Senator Sandel, we had Bridger Bollinger, and Tim Jimenez discussing with the businesses of Tooele County and talking about the bills through session. Nicolene, she was a guest with me today, and Chad Saunders was there, and Chris and Berna Sloan, and just great members of the community that are business owners and really love this community. They showed up, and our senator had they just had information. This is what I mean about this legislative transparency and how it affects us. And, Jared Hamner hosted with his team from the chamber, and Jared's key thing is collaboration. We need this collaboration between our senators and our legislators, talking to our local businesses, talking to our citizens, because otherwise you feel misplaced, you feel hopeless, and we're going to lose our country if we do not all get involved and start holding people accountable. And that's easier said than done. I understand that.
Yeah, we're going to lose it. Remember, you don't own your house. We're going to lose our country.
Okay. And
on that note,
this bright ray of sunshine.
You guys have a wonderful.
We love you. Thank you for
have a wonderful
support.
Rest of the week.
Remember, we're going to have a 2 p.m. show on Friday. Scott Wardle is going to talk to us. Well, he's going to be online with us, and that starts at 2 p.m. and we will be having an early show. So please tune in live to get your questions in.
Yep. We will see you guys then.